voice can break the dark. A single spark ignites the heart. But if we turn when justice calls, the chains we forge will bind us all. When truth is silenced, when lies take hold, the cost is freedom, the soul grows cold. No one stands tall while another must fall. Freedom for one depends on freedom for all. We're mavericks of freedom, rebels in the fight, defending every voice, defending every right. For the moment we falter, the moment we stall, we lose our own freedom when we let others fall. You can't stand free while others kneel. When justice fades, it's freedom they steal. An innocent condemned, a crime unspoken, and with it the bond of liberty is broken. No tyrant rules without our consent. Oppression thrives where silence is spent. Stand for the weak, the silence the small, or freedom will crumble for us all. We're mavericks of freedom, guardians of the light, fighting for the truth, for what is just and right. For the rights of one are the rights of all. We rise or we fall by answering the call. Even those we may oppose deserve the rights we all uphold. For if we deny them what is fair, we build our own prison in despair. The fight's not easy, it never will be, but justice for one is the key to be free. We stand as mavericks, together we strive, defending the rights that keep freedom alive. We're mavericks of freedom, rebels in the fight, upholding every truth, protecting every right. When one is oppressed, we're all in the thrall. Freedom for one depends on freedom for all. So take a stand, let your courage rise. Defend the truth, don't compromise. For the soul of the world, the writing's on the wall. Freedom for one depends on freedom for
Greetings, Mavericks and new viewers. Tonight, direct and live from the Maverick News Network World Studios. This is Maverick News with Rick Walker.
Hello everyone, welcome back to the Maverick News Channel. Hello Mavericks, my Maverick family. Great to have everybody here. It's going to be a good program tonight. We have so much to cover. We have a deal between Ukraine and the U.S. on mineral rights. I'm surprised Trump didn't go to Zelensky and say, I'll protect your country as long as you let me build a casino and a water park. Just like we're going to call it Gazaland 2.0. It just build it in Ukraine. Just saying. Friday is the big day. We've got information on that when Zelensky and Trump get together to finalize whatever deal this is. So we'll dig into that tonight. Also, the liberal leadership debate, the English version is tonight. So maybe we'll dip in on that later on in the broadcast. Maybe we'll go to the phones if there's enough time, or maybe we'll turn that liberal leadership debate into a watch party. And you can join on the on the phones or on the program and comment and make fun of the politicians when they say silly things. What else do we have tonight? Oh yeah, Don Lemont is not happy with Megyn Kelly. He said he told Megyn Kelly to go F herself. Yeah, thank you to John Rimby for drawing that to my attention. We're going to show you the clip tonight. And last night, I kind of almost sort of apologized for my language. It was a Rick rant night last night, and I guess some people like that. I never like it when I get emotional and I have a little bit of a Rick rant, but some people seem to like it. But hey, man, I was just sticking up for my country in the face of verbal aggression from that TikToker last night. And then, of course, there was Leo, who I guess I'm living rent-free in his head tonight because he's over in Facebook land ripping me again. So I'll show you why I disconnected his call last night, because some people are pretty upset with me for disconnecting Leo on his call last night. But I'll show you why I did that, to explain in a way that helps everybody understand that I do believe in free speech, but at a certain point, everyone's speech has to be limited to protect the rights of everyone else. And that has been part of the free speech experiment that we've been conducting here since the resurrection, the restart of this channel, which as a news channel started, oh my goodness. I started this like around when YouTube, I started doing this stuff when YouTube first came online. But, well, not exactly when YouTube began, but when YouTube was really, really in its early stages. But I couldn't make it work then, and then we resurrected it during the Freedom Convoy, even though I'd been doing some automotive stuff online as well, but that's another story. Bottom line is, this whole platform has been, a place to give voice to the voiceless, to practice real journalism in new form. And last night was another, I wouldn't say a chapter, but it was certainly a page in a chapter along the journey of exploring free speech rights, free speech ethics, free speech what's the other word that I'm looking for here? Just trying to navigate that free speech land that we all long for and cherish, but trying to find the right balance. It's a difficult thing, and I'll explain how I came to my decision last night with Leo. So stay tuned for that. I didn't even really want to talk about it, but I have to, and the reason I have to tonight as well is because I made an error last night that I have to correct. So if I have to correct the error, I might as well just provide the full explanation, and then maybe that will give people some clarity. Don't go away. When we come back, we'll dig into the top news stories of the day, and we've got a lot of them, and you get to join the conversation later on in the program. So I'll be right back.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News. Defending free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
You know, someone very profoundly once said many years ago that if fascism ever comes to America, it'll come in the name of liberalism.
Well, I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers. If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth.
The entire world is watching.
Every dictator, every crazy dictator in the world is watching. The world is watching. On TV.
The entire world is watching.
On social media.
But the entire world is watching, and yes, they are seeing what we have apparently bravely been willing to say that others are thinking.
Stand for freedom. Literally stand for freedom. Let's get this done. The entire world is watching.
We're at war with the most dangerous enemy that has ever faced mankind in his long climb from the swamp to the stars.
Maverick News. Maverick News. Maverick News.
Let me have more control of my own destiny.
The world is watching.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, let's start with Ukraine. We'll get into the politics too. Oh yeah, I forgot to tell you, not good news for the Conservatives tonight in Canada. New polling out, and it's not looking good, man. So brace yourselves. We're in for a bit of a horse race with this upcoming federal election, and we already have a horse race provincially in Ontario too, where the Conservatives under Doug Ford, I think they've got their hands full. We'll touch on that tonight too. But Ukraine and the United States do have, I guess, a tentative deal on mineral rights. They've reached some sort of a framework agreement for a broad economic deal that will does include the exploitation of rare earth minerals. And this has been confirmed by senior Ukrainian officials, 3 of them. And they, I guess, have released this information to some media outlets on the condition of anonymity. And the details of this, not exactly clear either, but we do know tonight that Trump has indicated that Zelensky will be coming to Washington this Friday to sign this deal.
President Zelensky is coming on Friday to meet with you, and is the mineral deal sorted out?
Yeah, I hear that. I hear that he's coming on Friday. Certainly, it's okay with me if he'd like to, and he would like to sign it together with me, and I understand that's a big deal, very big deal. And I think the American people, even if you look at polling, they're very happy because, you know, Biden was throwing money around like it's cotton candy, and it's a very big deal. Look, it could be $1 trillion deal. It could be whatever, but.
Okay, so I need my computer back here. It's freezing up on me. Okay, there we go. I needed to stop that clip from looping. So, maybe good news. I don't know. I'm actually scanning on the fly here to see if there's anything new with regard to this, because as I was about to begin the broadcast tonight, we still didn't really have much in the way of any details on this deal. But man, what a weird way to negotiate, and very strange times with Trump just like a week ago calling Zelensky an unpopular dictator, saying he only had 4% support in the polls over in Ukraine, pushing him to call an election that is really prohibited while at war by the Ukrainian Constitution. Really kind of, I would say, having his representatives, Marco Rubio, meeting with Lavrov, And on at least on the surface, it looks like they went over there, and at this point, it's the United States not asking Russia to cough up anything in these negotiations. And Zelensky originally refusing to sign that $500 billion deal with the United States because it would be some sort of, indication that they actually owed money. And then we saw, was it yesterday? Yeah, I think it was yesterday. Yeah, it was yesterday when Emmanuel Macron met with Trump, and kind of he really did put Trump in his place, because once again Trump was saying things that were not really accurate. Let me see if I've got the clip here somewhere. Let me find it for you. If you didn't see it, it's worth looking at. Macron being still diplomatic, and they have this weird relationship. You can see that they're like, it's almost like they're being fake friends, and they're touching each other's knees. It's very weird to me, the body language between these two guys. And when they shake hands, with Trump, it's always like some sort of a He-Man handshaking contest with anybody that he, any of these world leaders that he engages with. But here he is with Macron setting him straight. When Trump says that the Europeans, and the French in particular here, are getting all their money back, that they're just, that everything's a loan from Europe, but under Biden, the U.S. administration, former administration, was just giving it all away.
Again, just so you understand, Europe is loaning the money to Ukraine. They get their money back.
No, in fact, to be frank, we paid 60% of the total default, and it was through, like the U.S., loans, guarantee, grants, and we provided real money. To be clear, we have 230 billion.
Again.
When you're talking about money and deals and contracts and treaties and so forth, details are pretty important. And with regard to numbers, Trump makes stuff up. He exaggerates for effect. He really does, and that has been the case with his approach to Canada and the 51st state rhetoric and the trade deficit, and we're supposed to be ripping off the United States. He keeps citing this $250 billion or $300 billion, or sometimes it's a $200 billion annual trade deficit, and it isn't true. It just simply is not true. I've shown you the stats, and it's all backed up by government data from both the Canadian and U.S. governments. It's every year about 40 billion, not 250 or 300 billion, 40 billion. And if you take oil out of that equation, we actually buy more from the United States than they buy from us. But never let the facts get in the way of a good political narrative. That's me playing with words, with an old saying that we used to kick around in newsrooms. Never let the truth get in the way of a good story, right? It's a joke. Although some people would say that some media outlets these days take that to heart. I would say that's pretty much the case in a lot of cases, not just mainstream media, but online, just podcasters, live streamers, especially if it gets you clicks or likes or donations. Big time money. In some cases, if you just tell people what you want, what they want to hear, and if it's emotion based, you can get people to donate huge sums of cash. Be careful out there. But if you're dedicated to the truth, things can be a little bit more challenging. So Friday's the big day. We'll see how that goes. And check out the handshake between Zelensky and Trump. The big He-Man handshake contest between those two guys. But I'd say, Zelensky has really done an exceptional job of playing politics here. He didn't really bend the knee to Trump, and he didn't just, the word is that when this requirement from Trump that Zelensky and the Ukrainians sign this rare earth minerals deal was first presented, they basically went in and put this thing down in front of Zelensky and said, "You sign this." And I have to give the guy some credit for courage, because in the face of that, he said, "No, not going to do that." And anybody that stands up for their people against a giant superpower like the United States, under the direction of somebody like Donald Trump, who is using, well, in this case, again, a form of economic force to get what he wants through this rare earth deal, he said, no, it's not in the best interests of my people. And it's not predicated, and I'm paraphrasing using my own words here, but it's not predicated on factual data. It's Europe is not just handing over money. And that's the other thing. With respect to my good friend Leo, I'm told that he's going on again tonight about the $5 billion that Canada is sending over to Ukraine, and I explained it last night. And I'll explain it again now. The $5 billion that Canada has pledged to Ukraine this time that's all seized Russian money. It's not coming from Canadian taxpayers. It's not money that it can even go into general tax coffers. It's not part of the Canadian government's budget. It's money that was confiscated some time ago from Russian oligarchs or Russian government entities, financial entities. And so this is money that's been set aside, and then through a legal process, they're earmarking it and now delivering it to Ukraine in the form of financial aid, and doing it under the umbrella of justice, international justice, because it's Russia that invaded Ukraine, and they have all this destroyed infrastructure, damage to their entire country. So the premise for this is that they get the money confiscated from the Russians, including Russian oligarchs who they would say were unlawfully or illegally in possession of Ukrainian assets or other assets. That's a complicated, each one of those cases would be open to scrutiny on its own on a legal basis, but that's one of the reasons it took so long for this money to come forward. The bottom line is that $5 billion is not Canadian revenue. It's not Canadian taxpayer dollars. And even if they didn't give it to Ukraine, it wouldn't go into our government coffers. So it's just people who keep making this claim or saying, and I'm seeing a lot of other streamers still tonight making this claim that Canada and Canadian taxpayers are sending over another $5 billion while our people live on the streets. It's that kind of a narrative that they're spinning up still tonight. But the $5 billion, it's not ours. It was never supposed to be ours. It never will be ours. It doesn't belong to Canadians. It's not what it's for. And whether you agree with the confiscation of those funds or not, the bottom line is it's not our money. So what are you whining about? Not that money, not that $5 billion. And even if we wanted to confiscate it and use it for ourselves, that would be illegal. And unethical. And that wouldn't be justice. What, we take the Russian money and keep it for ourselves? That's not what we're doing. The fact that it's going to Ukraine shows that the proper process is being followed. So, whatever, man. If people want to listen to other people who are using that as some political talking point to score political points heading into an election or whatever the purpose might be, so be it. But it just isn't accurate. It's not. It's just a fallacy. It's a falsehood. Maybe even just an outright lie. And it drives me crazy. It really does, because I am honestly, dedicated to try to give you accurate information every night. So I'm reinforcing it here because it's an important point. So Zelensky, Friday. And, I don't know if I'll address this maybe later, how rich really is Elon Musk, because that came up the other night in that conversation that we had with our friends from ourprinciples.ca. And I'll share some of that with you here as well. Now, Caroline Leavitt, the White House press secretary, is celebrating tonight the court decision that upholds the White House decision to bar or ban, even, I guess you could say, Associated Press from some press pool events, some White House events. And they're now saying, that it's to, they're highlighting the fact that they are expanding the rotation of media that will be allowed into media conferences at the White House. Obviously, there's a limited amount of space, so they can only let so many people in. They're expanding that out to allow more independent journalists, podcasters, live streamers, smaller media outlets, and honestly, more conservative-oriented news outlets to give them more access at the expense of traditional or legacy media. But this court decision involves Associated Press, which went to court to try to get emergency action because they were barred from the media pool at the White House because they were refusing to call the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America. We showed you the clip there, and it was very Orwellian because Caroline Leavitt kind of just went hardline, and it was like, you will basically call this, they call it the Gulf of America. That's the accurate name because President Trump signed this declaration. And if you don't, we're not going to let you in. We're not going to let you into the press pool here. You're banned. And so they got kicked out. Well, tonight, let's go to this clip here. Hang on. It's upheld by the courts, and I'm not surprised because it is a privilege to get media access, even to political people, political events, to the White House, to Parliament. You're a member of the media, right? And so the big legacy media outlets have always had access to these political bodies, to the White House, to Parliament, etc. But things are changing. The media landscape is changing. And this is what Caroline Leavitt had to say about it today.
Finally, as you all saw yesterday, a federal judge denied the Associated Press's emergency motion for a temporary restraining order against myself, our Deputy Chief of Staff Taylor Budowich, and our Chief of Staff Susie Wiles for our decision to remove the Associated Press from the White House press pool for certain and special events. The judge's ruling, upholding our decision to deny the Associated Press such privileged access, reinforces the truth. And it reiterates what I said from this podium last week when that suit was filed. Asking the President of the United States questions in limited spaces such as the Oval Office in Air Force One is a privilege that unfortunately has only been granted to a few. It is not a legal right for all. The Trump administration has already proven to be the most transparent ever, and this president the most accessible in history. This is evidenced by President Trump's daily press conferences in the Oval Office, where he takes many questions from the journalists who have the honor and privilege of standing before the beautiful Resolute desk. The president and this entire White House are committed to ensuring the American people continue to receive this same level of historic transparency, access, and visibility. In fact, We want to double down and give even greater access to the American people. We want more outlets and new outlets to have a chance to take part in the press pool, to cover this administration's unprecedented achievements up close, front and center. As you all know, for decades, a group of DC-based journalists, the White House Correspondents Association, has long dictated which journalists get to ask questions of the President of the United States in these most intimate spaces. Not anymore. I am proud to announce that we are going to give the power back to the people who read your papers, who watch your television shows, and who listen to your radio stations. Moving forward, the White House press pool will be determined by the White House press team. Legacy outlets who have participated in the press pool for decades will still be allowed to join, fear not, but we will also be offering the privilege to well-deserving outlets who have never been allowed to share in this awesome responsibility. Just like we added a new media seat in this briefing room, legacy media outlets who have been here for years will still participate in the pool, but new voices are going to be welcomed in as well. As part of these changes, we will continue the rotation amongst the 5 major television networks to ensure the President's remarks are heard far and wide around this world. We will add additional streaming services which reach different audiences than traditional cable and broadcast. This is the ever-changing landscape of the media in the United States today. We will continue to rotate a print pooler who has the great responsibility of quickly transcribing the President's remarks and disseminating them to the rest of the world. And we will add outlets to the print pool rotation who have long been denied the privilege to partake in this experience, but are committed to covering this White House beat. We will continue to rotate a radio pooler and add other radio hosts who have been denied access, especially local radio hosts who serve as the heartbeat of our country. And we will add additional outlets and reporters who are well suited to cover the news of the day and ask substantive questions of the President of the United States, depending on the news he is making on that given day. This administration is shaking up Washington in more ways than one. That's what we were elected to do. As I have said since the first day behind this podium, it's beyond time that the White House press operation reflects the media habits of the American people in 2025, not 1925. A select group of DC-based journalists should no longer have a monopoly over the privilege of press access at the White House. All journalists, outlets, and voices deserve a seat at this highly coveted table. So by deciding which outlets make up the limited press pool on a day-to-day basis, the White House will be restoring power back to the American people who President Trump was elected to serve.
Sorta. I'm all for expanding access and using whatever methods might be available. But we can't lose sight of what precipitated this to begin with, and that was Associated Press saying, just using Gulf of Mexico instead of Gulf of America. And then the White House trying to enforce compelled speech. And that's what they're doing here. And that's why Associated Press is really being punished and singled out and taken out of the regular rotation from what as it appears right now. Still in there, but on an even more limited basis as punishment for not using a word that the White House wants them to use, that Donald Trump wants Associated Press to use. That's compelled speech. That's no different than a government telling Jordan Peterson that he must use certain pronouns, or telling you that you must use certain pronouns, or telling you that you can't use this word, or you must use that word. This is a direct assault on free speech, especially when the title Gulf of Mexico versus Gulf of America is controversial and not settled. Only settled to some degree within the United States itself, because I don't think any other countries around the world at this point are even recognizing Trump's order to call the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America. Within the United States, Google has started to relabel maps, as we showed you last night on the program, Gulf of America. This is an important thing because in politics, when it comes to government, the very concept of country, these are constructs. These are ideas. And by asserting his authority over this, just with the stroke of a Sharpie, again, he's compelling people to think a particular way. This shows the immense power that the president has. And if he can force media outlets, compel them to use particular words, then he can shape the way the entire country and even the world thinks. And it's one thing to reach these decisions as part of a collaborative negotiation or consultative process with other countries in cooperation, but to do it unilaterally without even talking to other people, foregoing traditional international protocols and even laws, and then enforcing it in this way, I do take exception to that. In addition to that, what people are also not cluing in on is in this particular case with Associated Press, it's a critical media outlet, not because it's like a legacy mainstream media outlet. Associated Press is a wire service, a news service that news services, especially local news outlets and regional news outlets across the country, subscribe to. It's like Reuters news service. There are a number of big news services like that, including like Canadian Press in Canada, where newspapers, radio stations, TV stations, and even if I wanted to subscribe to these news wire services, we could do that here. I just don't have a budget for it. But you subscribe to these services and then you have access to the audio clips, the video clips, the written content even that Associated Press or Reuters will produce. And then that stuff goes out to all the newsrooms across the country, or even beyond that, or even around the world. Associated Press. It's a service, a news service for news services, if you understand what I'm saying. Because obviously if you're a small local radio station and you need content for your daily, all your newscasts through the day, hour on the hour, you're getting that information from the newswire services. That's what Associated Press is. So Associated Press isn't there just representing Associated Press. They're representing probably 50 to 70% of every small, independent, medium-sized newspaper from small town USA to medium-sized town USA to New York to LA, all over the place. Probably hundreds of thousands or maybe even millions of news outlets. That's what Associated Press represents. So when they kick them out, they're kicking out all of those media outlets who won't then have access to coverage at the White House through their news service. That can be a problem. And then when it comes to what words to use, Associated Press, Reuters, they have what they call style guides. You'll learn about this when you go to journalism school. And within the style guides, they have words. And in those, and it explains what phrases Associated Press reporters, journalists should be using for a variety of reasons. They can be legal reasons, sometimes it's cultural reasons, political reasons. Most often it's for reasons that have to do with allowing people to understand what words mean, to get grammar correct, or even if it's like a lingo or slang, to have proper or a consistent use of a phrase. In recent times, it's come under criticism, these style guides, because they've been criticized for being woke or rewriting some of the words and the usage guidelines for being kind of woke. Maybe that's another reason that Trump has targeted Associated Press. Maybe he feels that the word, and this is an important thing, again, he may very well feel that Associated Press's style guide is too woke. And that's a major thing at a cultural and political level, especially when you've declared war on basically progressivism, wokeism, liberalism, as MAGA and the Trump administration has, even unofficially. That's really the focus of a lot of what they're doing. So they're hammering on these culture issues. And it's improper for the White House to be doing that. The Associated Press style guide, the use of these kinds of words, it's based on public, where the public view is on these issues, where the community standard currently is on these things. What is the generally accepted or most accepted view on the use of a particular word, and whether something is controversial or if it's established in law or in culture. So for Trump to intervene, or his administration to intervene in this way, it is very authoritarian, and we should be very concerned about it, because these kinds of issues shouldn't really be compelled by government. They should come about in a natural way, allowing the people through a natural process to adopt particular phrases and language, which then is reflected in these style guides and in the words that journalists end up using, not necessarily choose to use, but end up using in their work. Because it may not be the choice of the journalist, but they may be compelled to do it for professional or ethical reasons or cultural reasons. It's in a way complicated, but also cut and dried. The bottom line is, I think this is overreach by the government at a time when they're portraying themselves here as trying to be anti-censorship and opening things up. I applaud all of those things that they're doing, that Caroline Leavitt announced today, to give more media outlets more access, but I'm appalled at what really kicked this whole thing off and got us to this point. And at the core of it, there's still a heavy degree of censorship involved. And I have to wonder if any of these other independent media outlets decide to call the Gulf of Mexico, are they going to be banned too and taken out of the rotation? Are only media outlets, maybe there's more of them, but if they're all falling into line and bending the knee and using that phrase only because they're being compelled to do so, then we've got a big problem in our hands. And it's a problem that's masked, kind of hidden, and insidious culturally. Let's take a little break. That was a bit of a soliloquy, wasn't it?
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News, Maverick News. Defending free speech, Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Okay. So, man, I'll tell you, all this stuff with Trump has actually helped the Liberals in Canada. I'm not surprised, because his heavy-handed approach to things has people up here pretty darn concerned. And there is a new poll out tonight. Oh, before I do that, though, I should show you this. If you don't think that the impact of the renaming of the Gulf of Mexico by Trump, or the attempted renaming, is significant, all you have to do is look at what's going on Google right now in Canada. In Canada, where people have started to take note that Google has started to rename some Canadian parks. Oh, did I click out of that? No, it's still there. Has started to rename some Canadian parks as state parks. Even though here in this particular example up on the screen it says Miquelon Lake Provincial Park, but look down here, it's a state park on Google. And Google, of course, has started to, rename the Gulf of America, but only, we're told, in the United States. In other countries, it's still the Gulf of Mexico on Google, depending, so however you look at things. If you have geo-blocking, then it would affect the way you look at it and what words come up. But there you go. This is a concern. A lot of Canadians pretty upset about this tonight, especially in light of all of this 51st state talk. And this is a further erosion of the whole concept of Canada and our sovereignty. People are very concerned about it. It might seem like a little thing, but it isn't. It's a big thing, a very big thing. Slowly but surely, over time, if you allow the erosion of your culture, of even the idea of your country, the concept of your country, if you begin to, everything that they take, every little piece that they take, it diminishes the sovereignty of your nation. And you shouldn't allow them to do that. We shouldn't allow them to do that. It's an assault. Was that intentional? Was it a glitch in the system? Is it a glitch? No idea. It's just wrong. And we'll see if Google switches it back. Because these are provincial and in some cases national parks, and now they're state parks. You see how things just get out of hand real quick? Should be very concerned about it. And as I was saying, the Liberals in Canada benefiting. Let me see here if I've got, I should just pull it up over here. A new polling out. An Ipsos poll. Liberals take lead for first time. Here's the poll from Ipsos. Liberals recovered from this massive deficit behind the Conservatives, and they've regained the ground. And look at this tonight. I don't know if you can see that. It's a little bit small. Don't know if I can zoom in on it. But after nearly, it says here in the Ipsos webpage, after nearly 4 years of Conservative dominance in the polls, the Liberal Party of Canada has taken a 2-point lead among decided voters, overturning a 26-point deficit from just 6 weeks ago. Support for the Bloc Québécois has declined 3 points, while the NDP vote continues to collapse, losing 4 points, further strengthening the Liberals, and the Conservatives, losing 5 points, are facing headwinds from rising anti-Trump sentiment and anticipation surrounding the Liberal Party's new leadership. And 86% of people say we need a federal election immediately. So, on that front, people, they want to go to the polls. I think that's because Trudeau is so incredibly unpopular. But man, what a turnaround, and how quickly did that happen? And I told you before, even though it looked like Pierre Poilievre was destined to become the next prime minister, and possibly with the biggest majority government in Canadian history, if it had been held just a few weeks ago, the election, yeah, that's what we would have had. But now suddenly the Liberals back out in front, just ever so slightly. It's really just an even matchup because these things are plus or minus so many percentage points. So I'd say it's just an even dead heat at this point. 36, it says here, for the Conservatives, 38% for the Liberals, and among decided voters, the NDP at 12%. And I guess Jagmeet Singh, leader of the NDP, struggling with his level of support and popularity as well, even to the point where some people are beginning to question whether he should stay on as leader. Like Bloc Québécois, 8%, the Greens at 4%, and the PPC at 3%. And I'd say that for the PPC, that's significant, especially heading into the election, because I think they had seen an erosion of their popularity and support, with a lot of it bleeding off back over to the Conservatives. But I think with this shift in tone, mood, then the PPC maybe has regained a little bit of ground over there. So we'll keep an eye on things. I'm also trying to figure out where I can pick up this feed. Yeah, here we go. I'm going to pick up this leadership debate, Liberal leadership debate. I guess in the view of some people, the French language version of the debate last night kind of fell flat. And Chrystia Freeland making headlines with her story that I guess she told in French. And I didn't watch the French debate last night because it was in French, and of course I'm super busy, so I was kind of waiting for it tonight, and I figured I'll just pick up the highlights of it. And one of the highlights was Chrystia Freeland talking about speaking to a young, I think it was a 4-year-old girl, she mentioned, worried about whether Trump is going to invade Canada. And you'd say that's hyperbole or hyperbolic, but it is a concern for a lot of people, whether people care to acknowledge it or not. And she says that's why she's running. And as much as people think that Carney is the anointed one, the polling indicates that Chrystia Freeland is a very, very close second in that leadership race. So don't count her out either. And we'll pick up some of this debate very shortly, coming up near the top of the hour. So we'll share that with everybody. And maybe we'll be able to go to the phones during that as well. Let me just check something. I'm gonna take a quick break. I have to check something to make sure I have this feed coming in here properly for the debate tonight. So stay with me. I will be right back.
Maverick News. Fighting for freedom.
Okay, so I'm going to set up the phone lines here and get that all set up, and then we'll pull the feed in through that system so that you guys can call in. And I would only ask that during this thing, we try not to talk too much over the people talking. Very brief comments from anybody that calls in tonight during the course of the debate itself. But let's go to the phones here. I'll get it set up. Here is the number to call. Okay, Mavericks, it's call-in time. Join the conversation. Call 1-647-734-4220. Then enter the PIN number 860-075-764, followed by the pound sign. Exercise your right to free speech. Call 1-647-734-4220. Then enter the PIN number 860-075-764, followed by the pound sign. Call 1-647-734-4220. Then enter the PIN number 860-075-764, followed by the pound sign. Maverick News. Call now. The world is watching and listening to you. Okay, so just waiting for the debate to begin. And, yeah, I'll take the moment to, first of all, set the record straight on something with regard to Leo's call, to our call-in last night. And I made a comment about, some people alerted me to, of course, Leo going over, one of our kind of mavericks from the past, who maybe could be a maverick in the future, but, you know, not if things keep going the way they're going. He called into the show. And, of course, he has been kind of, shall we say, disruptive at times over here. And why did I kick him off the show last night? And that upset a few people. Well, there are some, I have my reasons. And I will share them with you now. Let me show you. Well, first of all, okay, it's because he was clearly trolling me and the channel, and trying to exploit the channel. You don't believe me? You think that it was me just being emotional? No, he called in. That was the second night in a row, or twice this week again. Well, let me show you this. Was he trolling? Oh, yeah. Here's his post from tonight talking about it. And this is, it was pretty clear what he was up to. So I kicked him off the show.
You know, people are worried about Trump. Don't worry about Trump. Trump ain't our problem. Really. There's nothing you can do. So people that are worried about it and they got the TDS syndrome and everything else, okay, there's nothing you can do about it. So relax. Worry about what's in your own fucking backyard before you start worrying about what's in the United States of America's backyard. Right? You got a lot of podcasters out there that are spewing bullshit that the Americans are coming, they're going to come and invade and everything else. So I did a little bit of trolling myself last night, and I called in Rick Walker show, and because he's all about all the nuclear war and everything else, fear-mongering fuck, that's what he is, okay? He's a fear-mongering fuck. I can't stand him. So I called in his show, and I baited him, and I just said, hey, you know, after he was done talking about Donald Trump doing this and that and coming to Canada, well, and he's all about being patriotic and standing up for Canadians, and we gotta fight. So I called in the show and said, which I expected for most liberals anyways, and I asked a question. Why don't you put a survey out there? Who's willing to send their children, okay, their daughters, their sons, their grandkids, maybe even yourself, to the front lines to fight a war with America? And he hung up the phone. That call was dropped. It was dropped. And then he started bad-mouthing whatever, right? But that's the response I expected from a liberal. They'll sit there and shoot their fucking mouths off, okay, and fight. Are you going to send your kids to the fucking front lines? I don't fucking think so. It's not going to happen. Right? So they're a bunch of fucking losers. Every fucking one of them are losers. And when the hammer comes down, I shall not forget who's the fucking losers in this country. And the hammer is coming. Believe me, it's a fucking coming. You know, another guy, he said, people are 2/3 of the country or half the country's living week to week, and they're within $200 to $1,000 away from fucking total annihilation.
Whatever. It was pretty clear the first night he called in that he was just trying to exploit the channel, but I let him talk. You know, I was hoping that it was an effort to mend fences and maybe he comes back. But no, I could tell that he was just trolling. And trying to convince people to give up when we're trying so hard to hang on to what we've got. And defend real freedom. And trying to avoid violence. That's what we're all about here. And I don't want the hammer to come down at all. Again, that's what we're trying to avoid. And why did Leo get banned before? Because he was telling people to go kill themselves. And that's not free speech. And nobody's had more free speech on this platform than Leo, who was a regular and a favorite here, and I understand that. He was a favorite of mine as well in many ways. But he had more free speech here than anyone. He had more access to our call-in show and was most often the first one to call in every night and would sometimes chat or talk for, and I would give him full access to the platform to do that night after night after night. Well, folks, the problem is that his free speech descended and deteriorated into things that were not really in the realm of free speech. And I won't tolerate people coming on here telling people to kill themselves, especially when it's directed at people who say they're suicidal. And that's really what started the whole thing with him. And then, and I also won't tolerate calls for violence, where the thing that actually got him kicked off the show on a permanent kind of ban, and wasn't even the one who banned him. It was one of the moderators who's no longer here, but rightly so. Or maybe I did ban him myself. In fact, I did ban him for this one because he made reference to using hemp rope to do some bad things with. And then last night after leaving the program, and this is where I have to apologize because I kind of got it wrong. But I should have known better because this, of course, came from him. He went over to another program where he's made a regular habit of attacking me and this channel on a regular basis, which is fine. You can go do that if you want. But at the same time, threats move into a different realm, and threats are not free speech. And so this is what was posted while we were still live here on this program, and he went over in a snit because I cut his call off. Again, making reference to the use of rope. Well, in this case, I apologize because I thought initially when this was sent to me by another viewer last night, a screenshot of the other broadcast where our friend Leo was attacking me and this channel. I thought this came from Mama Bear, but he was responding to Mama Bear 2086, so I apologize. I was wrong. I was reading this on the fly as it was sent to me, but he says this is from Leo. Honestly, when the crap hits the fan, Rick will be on the propaganda list and he be found swinging from a tree. Yeah, I kicked him off the show. I kicked his call. You want to criticize me for that? That's fine. My choice, this is my program. I'm responsible for it. It's in my care. But I share this with all of you, with the public, and we're here to serve the public. It's not Leo's little playground or anyone's platform to exploit or abuse or attack to tear it down. That's not free speech. I'm here to preserve it and to give people a voice and to make sure that everybody who wants a voice, deserves a voice, gets a voice here. That's what it's about. And so I know some people couldn't understand why I hit that button and kicked him off the call last night. That's why. Because that's what I get from him. He's not my friend. He's not a friend of the channel, and he's not really a friend of free speech, and he sure as heck right now doesn't appear to even be a friend of Canada. Because later in the broadcast, I'm not even sure he's a friend of you, because he's talking about how the hammer is coming down and he can't wait to see it happen. Why? Because he wants to see some people suffer. I guess what, to teach us all a lesson? Because we're too liberal or something? I'm not a liberal. I guess I embrace some classical liberal ideals. Of course I do. Because I live in a liberal democracy. Not a big L liberal party liberal, though. And regardless, so what if I am? What if you are? What if I'm black? What if I'm gay? You gonna hate me for that? Again, that's not what free speech is about. And that's not what a free society is about. And if that's if that's supposed to be an insult, well, he's a liberal. Well, we need to get back to a place in this country where conservatives and liberals don't live side by side as enemies, but as neighbors. So that we get back to some degree of civility and stability in a democracy. It's always messy. We'll be right back, and we'll go live with tonight's Liberal leadership debate.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals. Defenders of individual rights and freedoms. Credible. Trusted. Grounded in reality. Maverick News. Maverick News. Defending free speech. Free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Okay, let's pick up the live stream right now.
Stand up to bullies. And that's something that I've been doing in the House of Commons for the last decade. I know how to stand up to people like Peter Poilievre, who, when it comes to Donald Trump, would rather imitate him than stand up for Canada. I know how to stand up to people who want to take from us what is rightfully ours. We are a proud, sovereign country, and as Canadians, we have so much to offer, but also the Americans depend on us. And you can't bring a calculator to a knife fight. You have to fight very strongly and with the right tools, and that's exactly what I'm going to do as Prime Minister.
Ms. Gould, thank you kindly. We're going to move into our first 5-minute debate.
I think you forgot Christian.
Oh my gosh.
That's no
First
problem.
mistake by the moderator. My apologies. Ms. Freeland, thank you.
Thanks, Hannah. Trump represents the biggest threat our country has seen since the Second World War. I have recognized that from the outset. I've built my campaign on a plan to answer that threat. I do think, though, it is a big mistake for Canadians to think that because we can't change Trump, we can't negotiate with him. Of course we can't change him, but we can outwit him. And the way to do that is by using our leverage, by recognizing that, yes, we depend on the US, but they depend on us too. We are their largest market by far. We sell them the things we need. A smart, tough negotiator who stands up to Trump can activate those Americans who need us, get them to lobby him. That's how we get a win-win outcome. That's how Canada wins.
And now we will move into that first 5-minute debate. Thank you for pointing that out. This is an open debate. Mr. Bayless, we'll start first with you. Others can join in on this debate, but please try not to talk over each other too much. We will control that. So here's the question. Knowing the why is vital in negotiations, or you're essentially just negotiating against yourself. So why is President Trump doing this to Canada?
Well, President Trump needs to show that he has a win on the border. And he's got himself elected by saying he's going to deal with illegal immigration. And right away, he puts out a tweet saying there's a problem with Canada and Mexico. The problem is, for him, there is no problem with Canada. We know it, and the Americans know it. So he's trying to make one so that he can later solve it. Now, I want to point something out. This is not a negotiations. This is a shakedown. We have an agreement. He negotiated the agreement. He signed the agreement. The problem we have is he's not respecting the agreement.
So you believe it's the border, is what I feel for you.
I'm saying that that's his red herring, that he's trying to say we're a problem with the border that he's going to solve.
Ms. Freeland and then Mr. Carney.
Trump is starting with us for a very simple reason. If you can show the world that you can beat up on Canada, your best friend, your reliable, trustworthy neighbor, then think about how the rest of the world feels. It is the demonstration effect. It is saying, if I can beat up on those guys, imagine what I can do to you. And that's why a smart Canadian strategy needs to start with looking for allies, working in the first instance with Mexico, Panama, Denmark, and the EU, who all face the same sovereignty challenge. I think we need to invite the Secretary General of NATO to that first summit that I will host right after becoming Prime Minister. Working with our allies, we form a common front and stop Trump from doing what he wants to do, which is pick us off one after the other.
Mr. Carney, you're up next.
I want to pick up on what Christia just said. Because I think underlying all this is what President Trump is looking for is to dominate the hemisphere. He wants to enlarge U.S. power into Canada, into Greenland, into the Panama Canal, as was just mentioned. So the stakes are very, very high. This is a serious crisis, not just an economic crisis, it's a crisis of system sovereignty. So yes, we do need to build our allies. But interest of time, I'm going to add one other thing, and we'll come back to this later. We also need to build our economy. We need to build our economy right here. If we have one Canadian economy instead of 13, that more than outweighs the impact of what he's trying to do to us.
So,
Ms. Gould?
Yeah, thank you. And where, as I see where my colleagues are going, and I appreciate, I think all of that is probably true.
Yeah, we've got a caller on the
what
line.
did we just see in Ukraine? He did a deal with Putin for critical minerals in Ukraine. Who else has critical minerals? Canada.
Oh, yeah.
And so we need to understand what the U.S. is trying to do here, but we also need to make sure that we are standing up for our sovereignty and for our economy. You know, last night there was a bunch of
Who's with us on the
with
phone?
colleagues who said, well, I'm not even going to talk to Donald Trump.
Sandy.
Well,
Sandy.
guess what? We don't have that choice. We have to talk to him. That is something that we absolutely have to do on behalf of Canadians. We might not like it, but that is the role of the Prime Minister, to stand
Welcome,
up
Sandy.
and fight for Canada every single day. And that is exactly what I am going to do. Stand up for Canadians, stand up for our industries, and to say that we have leverage, we have
first
things
co-host
the
of the
U.S.
night.
wants, and we're not afraid to use them. And if that means that Americans are going to see increased prices or American industries are going to suffer, We will make sure that we put everything on the table as Canada because our sovereignty, our economy, our jobs are non-negotiable.
Okay. Mr. Bayless, let's try to go 30 more seconds because we have more interactions here.
Let me tell you the first thing I'm going to do. I'm going to go fly down and meet President Sheinbaum of Mexico. It's a very strong, smart lady. And I'm going to make a deal with her and say, look, we need to stand up together to Mr. Trump. He said he's putting 25% tariffs on both of us. He can't do that. It'll destroy his economy. So we need to call his bluff. And then what we need to do is take off the table what was already given for nothing. Which is the work that we were going to do on our border for $1.3 billion. And the work that she was going to do on her border and say, you know what? That's off the table now. We're back to square zero. That's how I will deal with President Trump.
Okay, Mr. Carney,
Get her done.
And then Ms.
Yeah,
Freeland.
let me make 2 points. One is you have to be able to do more than one thing at one time as Prime Minister. So that means building the economy. It means negotiating with allies, leveraging our critical minerals, leveraging our clean energy with those allies. That's critically important. And hitting hard with a real negotiation with President Trump, which includes dollar-for-dollar tariffs, includes using all the cards potentially that we have, and they are considerable as
well,
the U.S.
if she calls, we'll put her on.
Let me get Ms. Freeland in first, and then just one second, Ms. Freeland, and then I'll come to you, Ms. Gould.
About President Trump is with him, weakness is a provocation, and capitulation is not a negotiating strategy. The great thing is right now, Canadians get it. There is this wave of patriotism in Canada, and Canadians are going to stand and fight for Canada. They need a leader who knows how to lead that fight and rally that wave of patriotism. I'm the leader who can do that.
Ms. Gould.
Thank you. Well, one thing that I would like to ask Mr. Carney, because yesterday he made some mentions of sectors that he would protect over others. And I think what is really important is to understand which sectors you're willing to protect, but which sectors you would negotiate away. And that is something that I think as Canadians, we need to understand, because as Prime Minister, I'm not going to negotiate any of those sectors away. I'm going to stand up for people in every single province and territory, every single sector, to make sure that we protect Canadian jobs and protect our industries.
Okay, as moderator, all due respect, I'm going to try to ask the questions, but I am going to give Mr. Carney the opportunity to respond to that as well, Ms.
So let me be clear about a few things. One, not everyone would have watched the debate last night. So in a negotiation, if there are things that should never enter into the negotiation, language, culture, our water, you make clear at the start of the negotiation that they are off the table. Second thing is that the other aspects, for example, our auto sector, I'll give an example, which is intimately and interconnected with the United States. We're going to negotiate around maintaining a good deal for our auto sector. But that is not the same as accepting a bad deal, Karina.
Well, actually, when it comes to the auto sector,
10 seconds
in the previous NAFTA negotiation, we got a better deal than we had before. We changed the rules of origin for car parts that it gave an advantage to high-wage Canadian workers. That's the kind of approach we need to take.
Ms. Gould, do you want 10 seconds before we
Hey,
move on?
Alberta, what's
Okay,
up?
we are going to move on then. Thank you. That was a great, fulsome debate. We're going to move on.
And you can call
to
1-647-734-4220.
1-minute response each.
Join the party.
Question. So Donald Trump said again yesterday, I'm sure we all know, the 25% tariffs are coming on March the 4th.
Party.
Only days later, one of you will become the Prime Minister of this country. What is your first move? And again, this was drawn ahead
I'm
of time.
going to go to Disneyland.
So, first of all,
I'm
I don't
gonna
take
go
him
to
at his
Florida.
word. He said March 4th, but I would expect him to hit us beforehand, and I expect him to hit us again.
go to
What he's going
Florida.
to do is look at industries where he has overcapacity in the United States, because he'll be thinking that's going to hurt the American economy the least, I should
chime
say.
in,
So
chime
we're going to
in.
be looking at softwood lumber, and I'm going to be looking at dairy as the next two industries he's going to attack. And what we're going to be doing is supporting those industries completely. We're not going to let them take our jobs away. And we're going to be putting into place very intelligent counter tariffs. And then we're going to be waiting. And we're going to be waiting.
Come
because
on,
he's not
man,
going to stop
chime
until
in,
he gets
chime
the
in.
lesson that he can't get away with this.
I'd
And
like
what I
to
am
meet
going to
John
do is,
Alberta.
as I said, I will go down and meet with President Sheinbaum of Mexico.
John says
come
hi
together
back.
with her and say, listen, let's hold the fort together. Let's call him on his 25% tariff bluff. Let's just call it. Tell him, do it. And let's take everything that he already took from us off the table.
Mr. Bayless, thank you. Ms. Freeland, you're up next. And again, days later, it's you that becomes Prime Minister. What is your first move?
My first move is dollar for dollar retaliation. And let me be very clear with President Trump. If I am Prime Minister, I will not flinch. We will retaliate. If you hit us, we will hit back. But our retaliation will be a lot smarter than their dumb tariffs. And it's the Wall Street Journal, usually a supporter of Trump, that described this Trump effort as dumb. Canada, by contrast, is going to be smart. We are going to have a targeted retaliation that exerts maximum pain in the U.S. and does minimum harm to us. We're going to hit Trump's best friends. I will impose a 100% tariff on Teslas. I'm going to hit Wisconsin dairy. I'm going to hit Florida orange juice. And you are going to see a stock market reaction. You're going to see people like the American Farm Bureau complaining about the Canadian potash they need that costs more.
Canadian
and that
businesses.
reaction, that pain, will cause
Local
Trump ultimately to back down,
businesses.
just like he did last time.
Ms. Gould, you're up next. Only days later, you become Prime Minister. What's your first move?
My very first move is to call a meeting with the Council of the Federation and bring the premiers together to make sure that we share our plan for Canada, because this is every single province and territory, every business leader in our country, every union leader, every single Canadian. And then to share the plan with the entire country, because Canadians deserve to know what we are doing. Absolutely, we retaliate against Donald Trump. We do a major Team Canada approach in the United States where we engage with American leaders, but also American citizens, because it is American citizens who are going to feel the impact of these tariffs, and we need to let them know that this is not Canada's decision, this is the decision of the United States. And I'm going to call on Canadians to stop going to Florida, to stop buying Florida orange juice, because that's a $50 billion economy in that state alone. Canadians matter to the United States.
Ms. Gould, thank you kindly. Mr. Carney, days later, you become Prime Minister. What's your first move?
Well, I'll pick up on a few things. First, entirely agree with what Karina just said. First item, I would call it a First Ministers meeting as opposed to Council of Federations, but First Ministers meeting, sharing the plan, but also developing our broader response, our broader domestic response, including project. Secondly, entirely agree with Christian. Dollar for dollar tariffs, maximum impact on the United States, minimal impact here in Canada. Thirdly, put them on notice on the broader aspects of our commercial relationship. We are their largest supplier of energy. We are their largest supplier of electricity. We are their largest supplier of uranium. I could go on, but I will exhaust all my time. There is the first signs in the United States now of the economic impact of the Trump policies. We will amplify that, and that will begin to create the leverage. And then I will call President Trump.
And then you'll call President Trump.
Well, it's going to be a long day.
Okay, Mr. Carney, thank you. Ms. Gould, this is a 5-minute section, and I'm going to start with you on this. Others can jump in, again, if we can try not to talk over each other. Ms. Gould, what do you think Canada should be doing with our allies? And we did hear some discussion in the opening statements about this, given the shifting geopolitical sands around the globe.
Well, look, I mentioned that over the past week, Donald Trump has been negotiating away Ukraine's sovereignty and their territorial integrity. We saw President Trump abandon the free world throughout this process. We absolutely need to shore up our allies with democracies around the world, because our democracy is under threat. We need to protect the values that we care about. What does that look like? It means reaching the 2% NATO target, not because the U.S. asked us to, but because we need to as Canadians. It means making sure that we stand up for our values around the world, that we continue with our important international assistance. We saw Trump take away from USAID. Canada can't fill that void, but we can maintain our commitments. And it means making sure that we live our values on a daily basis on the international scene. The world needs Canada, and Canada will be there for the world.
Ms. Freeland?
It's a great question, because what is different about this unleashed and empowered President Trump is he is clearly threatening our sovereignty, and we need to respond. For the first time, the U.S., rather than guaranteeing, for the first time since the Second World War, rather than guaranteeing the rules-based order, the U.S. is turning predator. And so what Canada needs to do is work closely with our democratic allies, our military allies. I've been foreign minister. I know how to do that. That's why I would start with our Nordic partners, specifically Denmark, which is also being threatened, and our European NATO allies. I would be sure that France and Britain were there, who possess nuclear weapons, and I would be working urgently with those partners to build a closer security relationship that guarantees our security in a time when the United States can be a threat. And I would also, crucially, reach out to our Asian democratic partners, Japan, South Korea, Australia. They need to be part of the conversation too. We need to be ready for a world where the US is not the leader of the free world anymore. Canada can be and must be a leader in building this new order. Our allies are looking to us, and if we do this, we'll make ourselves safer as well.
Mr. Bayless.
Thank you. So we're in a lucky position in the sense that Donald Trump has targeted many other countries, European Union, we've talked about the other ones as well. So we can use this to our advantage. Now we can say to them, let's get together and target Donald Trump and target some of his industries. I'll give you an example. So Boeing Airlines, they have to sell planes all around the world, and they have competitors that can also compete with them and sell planes we can buy from Embraer, we can buy from Airbus and that. So we should get together with them and say, look, we're going to bankrupt Boeing.
What do you want me to
Canadian
do?
government should also do this. Under the same guise that he's using to impose
Talk
tariffs
more.
on us, we should say, you know what? It's an emergency
let's
situation, and we got to
target
relook
Trump,
at our
okay?
defense spending, where we're buying planes from the United States, we're buying all
We're
kinds
doing
of
quite a bit of that
defense
here
industry products
lately.
from the United States. And you know what?
I know,
We're going to put
so
them on
am I
hold for
too,
now. And
right?
if this
Holy
continues for a couple
crap.
of weeks,
Oh
we're
my
going to
God.
cancel them. We start this process.
You're
I
funny,
know, it's
Sandy. You're
interesting,
cracking
right?
me
We'll
up
hit
tonight.
them exactly where
It's
it hurts.
interesting, right?
Well, it's interesting.
It
I
is.
was asked a question a few weeks
Yeah,
ago. I was in Amherst,
very.
Nova Scotia.
Here's
and I was
Mark
asked a
Carney. Let's
question,
listen.
by
No,
some
Kristen
British
Freeland, she said it. She
journalists
said it.
about whether the UK
Let's
and
make
Europe could
Canada
avoid
safe.
the impact of President Trump. And I said, good luck with that. Now they're beginning
Right?
to see the impact we've seen.
Yeah, I need to
through
hear
UK,
Mark at the moment.
Ukraine,
Let's
and elsewhere.
just
So
listen for
there
a sec.
is
I know.
an
He did a
opportunity,
great one
in fact,
today.
a
He
necessity,
did
an
a
imperative
phenomenal
for us
today.
to work with like-minded countries on
speaks
the new
French.
security architecture. Yes, we have to step up for our contribution. How we protect our Arctic,
I
which
didn't
is
think
under
you were
threat,
there.
not just now from the Russians and the Chinese, but from potential U.S. incursions. Serious, serious issue. We have to work on our, I'll call it our data architecture, how we're going to handle artificial intelligence.
Come
Last
on,
point,
let's
because a lot of
target
people want to
Trump.
come in.
Let's target
We
him
need
and
to
let's
leverage all
boot
of
him
our
out.
assets, from critical minerals to clean energy and well
Let's
beyond,
save our
to
minerals.
harden
Let's
those
save our
partnerships in
energy.
Europe
Let's
and in
save
Asia
our
with
water.
Ms.
Let's
Gould.
save everything that
Hannah,
needs to
and
be
thank you to my
saved.
colleagues, I think, for some very interesting ideas. Mark, you talked about
We gotta
reaching
frickin'
NATO
save it.
targets, but of all of us on stage, you plan to reach those not until 2030, but the imperative to do that is now. You talked about the fact that the Arctic
2030,
is under
that's
threat.
a little late.
We
You
don't
need
have
to
time
do it now.
to wait for this. We have to actually make sure that we are investing here in Canada, reaching those targets, because our country, our sovereignty is under threat, and we are in a new world. And so the time to make those investments is now.
I do have a question about the targets coming up, so we will get to that. And just finally on this topic, Ms. Freeland.
I do believe we need to hit 2% by 2027, and we need to be focused on spending the money here in Canada with Canadian companies. But I want to be sharing a message from all of us
Target Trump.
directly with President Trump. What you are hearing
There
from the
you
Liberal
go.
Party of Canada is our sovereignty is not negotiable. Canada is not for sale. We are going to stand
Absolutely
with
not.
all Canadians and not become the 51st state. And Pierre Poilievre wants to imitate you, but we are going to defeat him, and together we're going to fight for Canada.
So guess what? That question's coming up right now, Ms.
Absolutely.
Gould, so we can follow up. Mr. Carney, I'll give you the opportunity, because today the British Prime Minister
We're
Keir
gonna
Starmer
fight the
announced
terrorist
2.5% of their GDP for defense spending by 2027. Everybody has spoken about boosting our own GDP in different years, so we'll clarify with you. Would you do the same? 2.5% by 2027.
Well, look, the first thing, we're starting from a different position than the UK is. But it also goes to the heart of what we're trying to accomplish.
Buy
I think this
local,
goes to a
buy
fundamental
Canadian,
point about how to manage
buy
government.
local
The outcome here
Canadian.
is securing Canada to protect Canadians. Now, I was born in the Arctic, born in the Northwest Territories. I know it well. I know the imperative. The imperative in the Arctic is to have at least 2 new bases in the Arctic, probably Tuktoyaktuk and Inuktitut. We need to build out on NORAD. We need to build out cyber capabilities. We need to build out Frontier.
Manitoba.
The core point,
I
will spend
local
defense dollars in Canada, not the 80% that this government has spent in the United States up until now. 80% of capital's defense dollars have gone to the United States. I will spend them in Canada, and I will spend them as rapidly as possible to secure
I'm not drunk,
for Canadians.
I'm sober.
But that is a management thing. It's not an arbitrary target.
Ms. Gould makes a good point, though. You had mentioned, I think, 2030.
I said by 2030.
Right.
And I said when I said it that we will do faster if we can deploy it faster in Canada. This is a management point. This is a core point about delivering security. And that is the issue, not just pushing money out the door.
1 minute for you, Ms. Freeland.
I think what it is about is will and a plan and commitment to defend our country. So I've put forward a plan to hit 2% by 2027. It is critical that we spend that money here in Canada on Canadian companies, and we need to be thinking about the next generation of
not
warfare,
2%.
as we're seeing in Ukraine. Drones, AI, these are really important. Our 2% should not be about sending checks to the United States. Critically, we need a plan to defend our own borders, very particularly the Arctic, and we need to be working with our Nordic and EU NATO partners. They have nuclear weapons. We need to say to them, we need a plan to protect and defend our shared Arctic without the US, and Canada will step up because it's our sovereignty that's at stake as well.
Mr. Bayless, you have
local.
So about a year ago, I published a letter and said that we should meet our 2% GDP in defense spending and that we should do it by 2030. That was a 6-year time frame. And even at 6 years, to do it intelligently, it's actually quite compressed. So anybody can spend money and everybody can waste money. But to do it intelligently and such that it impacts and comes into Canada and we're buying Canadian products, Canadian services and that's not as easy. So I can't say that we would get to 2% in 3 or 4 years. I don't think that's doable in an intelligent way. There are some things we can do, which I did say, which is we should pay our armed forces much better. We're not doing that. We need to raise their pays, raise their benefits. Then I proposed something called CARD, which is the Canadian Agency for Advanced Research in Defense. And this is taking something that the Americans do, and they have their program called DARPA. So I'm copying that program where they invest in research and development in Canadian companies. They develop something, now we see it's working, then we can procure it. So I want to make the spending, but it won't happen that fast.
Okay, Ms. Gould, now over to you.
Thank you, Hannah. So, I mean, I think you hear from
Hello?
all of us that we want
I'm
to
here.
increase our defense spending.
I'm
It's
just
a
listening.
matter of who's going to do it in the timely way
So
that
we
we
have,
need to do it. And I'm committed to doing it by 2027.
businesses here
and there
where
are
I
2 ways
am.
that we can do this. First,
There's
by increasing the
Quaker Oak.
salaries of our Canadian armed forces. We do
There's
not pay
Minute Maid,
our
Orange
military
Juice.
personnel a sufficient wage in this country, and they are there for us
And
when
they're
we need them most.
Canadian.
And so we need to pay them more. That's something that I would do immediately as Prime Minister. Second, what can we do? You know, Mr. Carney talked about military procurement, but our military procurement isn't working. We have a lot of orders on the docket. We need a procurement czar to get those orders moving. And while I entirely agree with a Made in Canada solution, we need to ensure that our troops have the equipment, the tools, and the resources that they need to fight and protect us here at home and around the world.
Okay, this isn't a debate period, but I do see everybody wants to jump in. Ms. Freeland and then Mr. Carney.
I just want to push back against the idea that managerial or technocratic obstacles should get in the way of defending Canada. We really need to act with the fierce urgency of now. We need to recognize President Trump has said dozens of times. He wants us to be the 51st state. I don't think any of us wants to be the leader who was asleep at the wheel and didn't get Canada defended, did not work with our democratic allies to protect our borders.
Leave
If
it
they
alone.
want to work with us, it's time for us to step up at home, to urgently reach out to them and build a new world order where democracy and Canadian sovereignty.
And, oh, don't use that phrase. She just killed herself.
Yeah,
Associate
don't
myself,
use
I'm
that
going to agree
phrase
with
anymore.
that. The only amendment I'm going to make is,
I'm so
unfortunately, it
tired
won't
of
be a world
it.
order.
Somebody just
It will
gave
be
her a gun.
subset
She shot
of the
herself
world
in the
order
foot.
Because the number of like-minded countries is much smaller than the U.S.
Oh my
exit.
God.
But I want to make
What
an important
politician
point.
uses that these days?
Because a huge element
Not
of
smart.
securing Canada is going to be related to information warfare. It's going to be related to cyber. It's going to be related to artificial intelligence. And it's crucial that we're in Montreal. We're in one of the centers of artificial intelligence excellence. There are others in this country. It's crucial that we're building those capabilities on Canadian technologies, to Canadian values, to protect Canadians, because we can't rely on foreign suppliers for them. That is one of the new realities that are there. So the natural approach here is gone. And that's one of the main priorities I would have in terms of securing Canada.
Mr. Bayless, jump in there.
Yeah, so I'd like to give you an example of how we can do this intelligently and how we can do it the wrong way. If we try and push tens and tens of billions of dollars out the door within 3 years for government procurement of defense,
Good luck with that.
It's going to be splashed all over the place, and we're not going to get what we need. The program that I'm calling for, CARD, Canadian Agency for Advanced Research and Defense, what we would do, I'll give you an example with respect to drones. Right here in Quebec, we have a very strong aerospace industry. So we would give out 5 or 6 research contracts, and none of this, by the way, is subject to our trade agreements, and see who comes up with the best drone. And once we have that, then we can go and say, we're going to buy that from you. But to develop it and get it done like that, that's not going to happen. So if we try to do this too quickly, we're going to be wasting money, and we're going to be wasting an excellent opportunity to build Canadian industry.
Oh my God, a drone?
Thank you. I would push back gently on that to say that getting our troops the equipment and the supplies and the tools they need to defend Canada is not wasted money. It's actually imperative for them to defend and protect us in this time. But Mark brought up an interesting point about capabilities here in Canada. And as the Minister of Democratic Institutions, I put in place Canada's first ever and only plan to protect our country
Did you hear
from
that,
cyber
Rick,
attacks
about the
in our
drone?
democracy. And as part of
Yes.
that, I know that we have one of the premier
sad.
cybersecurity institutions through the CSE here in Canada. But what we don't have is our own intelligence agency that can work to collect foreign intelligence. Now might be the time that we need to establish those capabilities. We heard earlier today that the Americans had thought about removing Canada from our Five Eye partnership. We rely too much on the Americans for intelligence internationally, and we need to ensure that Canada has the capacity and the capability to protect ourselves, to work with democratic partners, and to ensure more than anything we are protecting Canadians, Canadian industry, and our economy at a time of intense cyber espionage. And this is something that is an important policy for today in 2025.
Ms. Freeland, jump in there.
You know, I really believe in Canada and Canadians, and there is this wave of passion in our country to defend our country. One of the reasons that I decided to run for the leadership is I had a conversation after Trump made his 51st state threat with a couple of very brilliant young technologists who worked with Jeff Hinton, the Nobel Prize-winning father of AI. And they said to me, we know what's happening in Ukraine, and we see how technologists are leading the fight. We are patriotic Canadians. We believe in our country. We need a government that gets that invests in us, because we are ready to stand on guard for Canada. And that is the approach we need to take. I think we need to have confidence that Canadians, empowered and led by a government that believes in them, will do this.
Mr. Carney.
Okay. This is a crucial conversation. And I'm really heartened by both the seriousness, the range of ideas, but I'm going to bring up one related aspect, which Karina just touched on, which is about foreign interference in our democratic institutions. And the responsibility of all politicians, particularly leaders of parties, and certainly a prime minister, is to be fully briefed on these issues. Pierre Poilievre hasn't ever bothered to get his security clearance. I've already, during this leadership campaign, filled out my forms. It wasn't that hard to do, I have to say, and put them in, and I fully expect to get it in the near future. This is the kind of irresponsibility at a time when our country is under threat that we cannot afford. We cannot afford a leader like Pierre Poilievre.
Mr. Bayless?
I'd like to just do two things. First of all, clarification on Ms. Gould. I put out my defense plan before yours, and in it, I made it very clear that I was going to raise salaries, but that's not going to spend tens of billions of dollars. Having said that, what we do need to do is increase enrollment, and that will come by getting better salaries and benefits. And also, there's another area where I'd like to see a step up, where we've really fallen far behind. We're down to 33 UN peacekeepers in the world. This is not acceptable for Canada, the country that brought peacekeeping to the world. So I'd like to really invest in recruiting, strengthening the number of people in our armed forces, and putting some out in peacekeeping roles.
I want to thank you all. That was a great first theme. We are going to move on now to the second theme of this evening. And this is going to be a question for all of you. It's a 1-minute question. And I'm going to start with Mr. Carney this time. So Canadians are living in tough economic times. As Prime Minister, what would your priority be to strengthen our economy?
Me too.
Well, I think I'll start my answer by saying this will be one of my top priorities, jointly with these issues that we just touched on, largely with the U.S. and the threats to our security. A focus
$35
on
an hour
building our
for
economy on
Canadians.
several layers. First and foremost, this is a time to build. We have an enormous opportunity to build our economy. That means building millions of homes. We're millions of homes short in this country. Everyone who's trying to buy a home is aware of that, particularly young. It's building infrastructure, both conventional energy infrastructure and clean energy infrastructure. It's building up on the conversation we just had, on intelligence infrastructure. It is diversifying our trade partners with new trading routes, and it's creating one Canadian economy instead of 13. That's what's necessary to move this country forward from where we are today, which has become quite a weak
$100
position
an hour for
economically.
Canadians.
We will dig into some of those topics a bit more. Ms. Gould, you're up next.
Thanks, Hannah. I think your question was actually about the cost of living for Canadians. It wasn't about, the macroeconomic picture, which we know is doing okay for Canada. But when Canadians, people, don't feel like that, it's not working for them. I'm glad to hear, my colleague talk about housing. It's one of the first times I've heard him talk about it during this campaign. I put out a very bold, ambitious plan on housing that would eliminate homelessness, that would build millions of homes, and it would help first-time homebuyers get into the market. I've proposed a 1% GST tax cut from 5 to 4% to help Canadians with the immediate cost of everything. And I've put forward a plan to modernize our social safety net and put us on a path towards a basic income. Canadians are struggling. We need to help them make ends meet. That's what leadership looks like, and that's what the economy means to me. It's about people.
Ms. Gould, thank you. Mr. Bayless, you're up for a minute.
Yes, I put together a plan, an economic plan. I call it my prosperity plan, and I'm going to bring fiscal discipline to Ottawa. And yes, we're going to have to stop running deficits. It has a direct impact on the value of our dollar, and that has a direct impact on affordability. So I will not be cutting the GST. I'm going to modernize our healthcare system to get it to do a lot better with less. That's our biggest spend for provinces, our biggest transfer from the federal government. I'm going to increase productivity. This is something I know from my work in business, but it's something as well that I'm going to bring to government. And also, I'm going to do a lot of procurement as much as possible within our trade rules from Canadian companies. Together, this is going to put us on the right path. Now, people say, what date? What date, Frank, are you going to end deficits? I can't give you a date, but what I can say is this. We're going to stop going down this pathway, and we're going to start going down this pathway of budgetary balanced budgets. And this is going to raise our dollar, and that'll be better for everyone in the long run.
Okay, and 1 minute now to Ms. Freeland.
All economic plans today have to start with an effective response to President Trump. He is the biggest economic menace our country and Canadians are facing. I have a plan to make us united, strong, and smart, and to win. I think we also all recognize that President Trump is also handing us a golden opportunity. Canadians right now really get how wonderful Canada is, and they understand we're under threat. And so today we have a chance, a once-in-a-generation chance, to make Canada stronger, richer, more prosperous, more resilient. I'm going to seize that opportunity. I'm going to cut interprovincial trade barriers. I'm going to cut red tape and get things built. I'm going to use government procurement not to send checks to the US, but to invest in Canadian jobs and Canadian companies. That's how we make Canada stronger, more resilient. That's how we stand up to President Trump.
We are going to move into the 5-minute section. So,
and I'm going to provide more clarity and a further explanation on these funds going to Ukraine, that $5 billion later in the broadcast, because I need to correct some inaccuracies or misconceptions that may have left out there.
How would you make it more affordable for them?
Okay. I would like to come back to some of the points raised, but this is such an important issue. I'll go straight to affordability. You know, what's happened in this economy over the last 5 years is that people's wages have not kept up with the rise in prices. So we've had the average family of four, their food basket has gone up by more than 25%. Their wages haven't kept pace with that. So, and we see the growth in food banks, but we see everyday middle-class families struggling as a consequence of it. So a huge range of things need to be done to improve affordability. And let me list some of those because they're crucial. The first thing is my government will make a middle-class tax cut. Secondly, my government will remove, as Ms. Freeland will, remove the GST for first-time home buyers. This is a crucial point, getting on the home ladder. We need to, if we have one Canadian economy, we can reduce prices by 15%. If we have greater competition in our economy, which my government will deliver, in groceries, in broadband, in transportation, that will bring prices down. That will help people move ahead. So we have to tackle the affordability issue across the board. Last point, absolutely have to keep in place the progress that the government has made on crucial things such as childcare, on dental care, and farmer care, because that helps those who are most vulnerable.
We'll talk a little bit about healthcare soon too. Ms. Gould, you're up next.
Thank you, Hannah. You know, when my colleagues talk about households, I talk about families. When they talk about, you know, the macro picture, I talk about what it means for individuals. And I'm so proud that I was able to deliver affordable childcare for families across this country. And I would expand that to include before and after school care as well. But when we're talking about people who are going to food banks, we're talking about the most vulnerable in our society. A middle-class tax cut or removing the GST on new homes isn't going to help those folks. But you know what will? Modernizing our social safety net, making sure that seniors who live
Why are
on
we
fixed
getting
income,
GST?
persons with disabilities, folks who have lost their job, who need support to
Taxes are
retrain and
inevitable, just
rebound,
like a
are
death.
better off. And that's why I'm talking about opening a path towards a basic income. Poverty costs money. That's why we need to work to eliminate homelessness. It's why I would work with provinces and territories to have specific accords to ensure that folks who get into housing can stay stable.
Poverty
and that
costs
they can enter
money.
the workforce and join and be prosperous. We need to
That's a
tackle
new one.
poverty in this country. It is urgent for us to do, and it is something that I am promising that I will work on with Canadians to ensure that every person in this country has a real, viable opportunity for success.
Ms. Freeland, you're up next.
That's hilarious.
so glad
I used to
to have
joke.
childcare
Used to say,
mentioned.
there's only one thing money
As
can't buy:
finance
poverty.
minister, one of the things
And I'm wrong.
so grateful to be able to do was to introduce in my first budget a
I've been wrong
national
all this
system
time.
of learning and childcare. And it was wonderful to work first with Ahmed Hussein, get that first crucial deal with BC and a bunch more. And then Ahmed handed the baton to Karina, and we worked together. This is generational. It's transformational for Canada. My affordability plan includes 100,000 more childcare places. It includes a middle-class tax cut. It includes a cut on credit card fees. It includes a cut on taxes for first-time home buyers. And the critical thing for us to all remember is the real threat to Canadian families, the real threat to people working really hard and struggling to get by is not anyone on this stage. It is Pierre Poilievre. He will cut. He will bring in a cruel austerity that will hurt all the people in Canada who need the help the most. And that's why I'm proud to be a Liberal, and that's why I'm running to be the next leader of our party.
Mr. Bayless, I'm trying to pick up some time here. 30 seconds to you, and then I'm going to come over to you.
So you mentioned food banks. I've actually been on the board of directors of a food bank for 11 years. And you'll note that was over the time that I was a member of parliament. So normally I stepped off all boards because you don't want to politicize them. But the food bank said, Frank, we don't care. We need your help. Please stay on the board. So I understand this intimately. Now, what tends to happen with politicians, they did it this time. They brought the grocery store owners in and they yelled at them and screamed at them. But the reality is this. If you want to buy an orange, that grocery store has to go buy it in the United States in US dollars, bring it to Canada, convert it to Canadian dollars. Every time our dollar goes down, the price of that orange goes up. Now, if we want to get that down, working, we need to bring our dollar up and bring oranges, bananas, everything else down. That's the solution.
Mr. Carney?
I want to be clear, and Canadians feel this. I want to be clear about the, quote, strength of our economy. Our economy over the last 5 years has been driven by a big increase in the labor force, which was largely because of a surge in immigration that is now trying to be controlled, and by government spending that grew over 9% year after year after year, twice the rate of growth of our economy. Okay. So our economy was weak before we got to the point of these threats from President Trump. That's why we need big changes. That's the reason I'm here. That's why we need big changes to how we're managing this economy. I want to make one last point, which goes to workers. My plan, it's a time to build across this economy. We can go into more detail. It is going to be a great time going forward to be a worker in Canada. It is going to be a great time to be in the trades in Canada. It's going to be a riot. Because we are going to build this country across this country.
It's going to be a fun time
for Canadians.
With all these tariffs and the depression.
Look, I'm not going to talk down Canada. I am only ever going to be a champion for this country.
Well
and
said,
when it comes to the question that was asked about poverty, we actually have to talk about people in poverty and what their lived experience is. When I was the Minister of Families, I worked on a national school food program that is now going to be supporting thousands of kids across this country and delivered childcare. But let's be clear, poverty costs us money, and investing to tackle and end poverty, like things like the Canada Child Benefit or increasing senior supports, is going to benefit all of us.
And 30 seconds to you, Ms. Freeland, and then we'll move on.
I just want to say really quickly that we need to be really careful.
Costs less if you buy it in bulk.
Conservative talking points. Canada most definitely is not broken. We are a strong, resilient country. Canadians live 4 years longer than Americans, and median wealth in Canada is higher than in the U.S. Trump is giving us an opportunity to make a strong economy even stronger and more resilient. And I think as Liberals, we have to remember the great legacy of Jean Chrétien and Paul Martin. We are the party that believes in social policy and economic policy. We know how to deliver jobs and growth, and we know how to support people.
Oh my God.
We believe in both, and
I
that is
get
the
it,
kind of
but it's
party,
still
and that is the kind of government I will lead as Prime Minister.
We're going to have one more 1 minute issue, and we can talk about
This is the dumbest thing ever. I just can't help
so
this is terrible.
This is supposed to be with Ms. Freeland as well.
She's not, but they're going to save us.
As Prime Minister, and we're coming back to what we were talking about when it comes to
What
managing
the hell is she going to do?
Oh, let's listen.
How would you manage the nation's books at this critical time? And of course,
said it
you are the
twice.
former finance minister.
What's
Yeah,
enough?
well, I would start by pushing back very forcefully against conservatives who talk Canada down. The reality is Canada has a strong fiscal position. We have a AAA credit rating, and we have the lowest debt and the lowest deficit in the G7. That was important for me to maintain a fiscally responsible position because I know that we have needed to keep our fiscal firepower dry because I saw that Trump was coming. Today, we need to seize the opportunity that Trump presents us to harness this wave of Canadian patriotism and to build a Canadian economy which is even stronger with more jobs, more investment.
Oh my God, Rick, you're making me laugh.
And critically, we need to remember
This is hilarious.
that standing up to Trump is the foundation of all economic policies.
I'm gonna
and
shoot
there could
myself
be
in
some
the
pain
knee.
involved. The government has to be there to support workers, to support
gonna shoot my
businesses.
knee off.
As Prime Minister, you have my commitment that I'll do that.
Mr. Bayless, your 1 minute starts now.
So as I mentioned, I'm going to bring fiscal discipline to Ottawa. Now, when I say that, a lot of people think, okay, is he going to cut services or is he going to raise taxes? It's neither. There's a third option, which is to increase productivity.
Oh my
So if
God.
we increase productivity, we increase richness, we increase our tax base and everything. Now, as a business owner, I've done that. When I brought a company from 2 people to 1,000, I know how to invest intelligently to increase productivity. Added to that, as I mentioned, I've also been elected. So I'm the one person here that understands both sides of the coin. And I'm going to use that skill set to then say, okay, how do we put in place government programs that are going to help the economy work, government programs that are going to be à la bénéfice, to the benefit of businesses, and take away ones that are hurting, such as, for example, I wrote well over a year ago that the increase in capital gains was a very bad idea because it goes against what we want. It discourages investments when we want to encourage them.
Ms. Gould, you're up next.
Thank you, Hannah. Look, I'm all for increasing productivity, and in fact, last week I announced a plan to create a million new entrepreneurs in this country. I'm the daughter of a small business owner. I grew up working in the family business, and I think we need to unleash that economic potential.
Oh my
But
God.
if someone tells you that they're going to balance the books in a very short period of time, increasing our productivity in that period of time is not going to be sufficient. And at a time when we are facing potentially one of the greatest economic shocks our country has experienced, we need to ensure that
whole
the government can be
world
there
is
for
in an
Canadians,
economic
like the federal
shock.
government was during the pandemic with the Canada
whole
Emergency Response
world
benefit, the
in our
business
hands.
loan, as well as the wage subsidy, because we will win against Donald Trump. But we need to ensure that Canadians have the income support they need and the jobs to get to when we eventually win. Thank you.
Mr. Carney, the
We
last
are
in the 1
all
minute.
in shock.
Well, it was my privilege to work with Paul Martin when he balanced the books and kept the books balanced. And one of the lessons of that is the need for
We got
government
the whole
to continue
world in our
focus
hands.
on
Sandy,
how
let
effectively
people listen. They
we
need to
spending
hear.
precious taxpayers' dollars.
Sorry.
In other
It's
words,
okay.
a focus on the outcomes of programs as opposed to the dollars going in. And one thing you can see is that the scale of increase in spending and the scale of increase in the public service hasn't been matched by greater productivity in certain areas. So the focus does have to go to that in order to create the room and maintain the room for those social programs, because that is what the Liberal Party is about. One of the core things, which is to manage responsibly our fiscal position so that we can support the vulnerable in society, so we can move forward as a society. So we need to spend less and invest more as a country.
We're going to move into a 6-minute debate on this. Yes, because this is something we want to continue to discuss. Ms. Freeland, I'll go to you first on this one. Productivity seems to be sort of a sleeper issue. When you mention it to Canadians, they go, How will you fix productivity in this country?
Well, I think that President Trump is giving us this golden opportunity to fix some of the long-standing, well-known obstacles to Canada being more productive. Interprovincial trade is the standout example, and we now have the will to do it. Recognizing foreign credentials of people who are already here, you know, that famous person we all know who is driving a taxi but is a nurse or a doctor, that's another example. Another one is just cutting red tape to get big projects built. But we're coming to the end of the economic section, and I do want to talk about a part of the economy where there have been huge leaps in productivity, which is central to Canada's resilience and economic strength, particularly as we face up to Donald Trump, and that is rural Canada and our farmers. I am the daughter of a farmer. I grew up on a farm. There are no people in Canada or the world who work harder than farmers. And I do think it's really important for us to have government policies that support our farmers. They give us food security. They are an important source of strength when it comes to this standoff with the US. And we need to be very clear with Canada's dairy farmers that we will stand for supply management. I mean, isn't it a good thing that we produce our own milk, our own eggs, our own butter, our own cheese, that we're not dependent on US factory farms for that? So we need to remember and stand with our farmers.
Ms. Gould, you're next.
Thank you, Hannah. Look, Christia, I'm really glad you mentioned the rural economy and agriculture. One of the first things I would do as Prime Minister in my speech from the throne is to ensure that we protect supply management. It was a piece of legislation that unfortunately died when we prorogued Parliament, but I think it is imperative that we protect our supply managed sectors. But I think one of the frustrations that rural Canada has had with us as a government is that we haven't spoken enough about sectors in rural Canada, whether that is mining, whether that is energy, whether that is agriculture, whether that is forestry. And for us, we have to really ensure that when we talk about productivity, we're not just talking about new sectors, we're talking about existing sectors. And this is where AI can be used as a tool to enhance productivity in those sectors. And that's something that I'm really excited about. But one thing that I do want to mention, and Mark, I'm glad you talked about Paul Martin, because I know you were a really excellent Deputy Minister of Finance who did really good work, is that we also need to remember that the economy is about people. It's not just numbers or points on a graph. It's about how do we make the economy work for people. And Hannah, your question about productivity, what does that mean to the average Canadian when they're saying, I can't afford my groceries and I'm having a hard time paying my rent? We need to talk about the things that matter to Canadians, not because we're talking as politicians, but because we're talking as people who understand and experience what they're going through. Okay. And that's something that I bring to the table.
Okay, I'm going to have to stick to time on this topic. Mr. Bayless, you wanted to jump in on that, and then Mr. Carney after that.
So when we talk about productivity, one of the first places I'm going to look at is the federal government itself. That's when I talked about modernizing the federal government, one of my 3 priorities. I'll give you an example here. Revenue Canada is the biggest pain point for both individuals and businesses in trying to pay their taxes. This is ridiculous. This is such a waste of time, and that wasted time directly impacts their productivity. So I'm going to fix Revenue Canada. I'm going to get it working the way it should work, because the people that are calling and trying to work with Revenue Canada are good people. They're trying to pay their taxes. Other things I'm going to do. I'm going to build 2 pipelines, 2 gas pipelines to get our great Alberta natural gas to the East Coast and the West Coast. That's going to have a huge impact on our economy. It's going to diversify us away from reliance just on the Americans. And yes, it's going to have a very positive impact on the world's environmental situation, because it'll allow our Asian and our European allies to come off of coal and oil and start using a much cleaner fuel, liquid natural gas, from Alberta.
Mark Carney.
Okay, one of the reasons why families have a hard time to afford their groceries is because we haven't had productivity. That's the issue. It's that their wages aren't keeping pace with prices. That's because they're not being given the right tools to work with. We're not working as smart as we should. So that's the challenge that we're talking about. And that's the result. And that's the connection. As Prime Minister, you need to make the connection between policies that make that difference that go to families. So both are connected. A couple quick points. Number one Canadian economy will drive huge productivity. Secondly, productivity in government, as Frank just said, I won't go on about it, but it's absolutely essential. We have not had the productivity we need in government. Thirdly, the 2 big drivers of productivity going forward will be the energy transition and AI.
Okay, I'm going to give you each 15 seconds. Ms. Freeland, with you first.
Oh my God.
making Canada more productive, which just really means making us all more prosperous, means we have to invest in infrastructure. We have to invest in physical infrastructure. That's why I'm so supportive of high-speed rail. We also have to invest in social infrastructure. That is infrastructure too. And early learning and childcare is such a great example because this is a policy which makes life more affordable for families. It makes kids smarter because it's so high quality, and it adds to the labor force without requiring any new homes. So physical infrastructure, social infrastructure, and we have the national will to really do this because we know we need to be more resilient because we're at this critical moment for our country.
Rick,
facing the
we
need
have
to stand up to Trump and
productivity.
defend our sovereignty and our economy.
That was not 15 seconds, but we'll try again. Karina Gould, 15 seconds for you,
We
and then I
do.
am going to give Mr. Bayless 15 as well.
We do.
The job
We
of
have
Prime Minister is to
productivity.
connect
Okay,
with
let's listen.
Canadians. And it's to ensure that you are placing the priorities of Canadians at the center of everything that you do. That's why tackling things like homelessness and housing affordability actually make people's lives more affordable. That's the job of being a politician. It's putting the human face on policy.
Mr. Bayless, 15 seconds.
So with respect to productivity, I'm one of those people that says, what's best practices? Now, one of the leaders in productivity in the world is Ireland, and they have a very clear axiom of belief. Capital gains should be lower because it encourages investments. Whether you're on the right or the left of the spectrum, they all know that. They keep their capital gains tax very low, and that encourages the investments that they need for productivity.
Literally 5 seconds, Mr. Carney.
It's time to build. We should support builders, and those are people who take risk for our country.
Okay, we are going to move on to our third theme this evening.
I
wanna
like
thank you
Carney.
for that last one. It was a really good debate. And we're going to start with you, Ms. Gould, on this one. This is a 1 minute, so each of you are going to get 1 minute to respond to this. In 2015, Justin Trudeau swept to power in large part because young Canadians, they liked him, they voted for him, but fast forward to today,
They
that
wanted
age group is
legalized
really
weed.
moving
That's why they
towards
liked
the
him.
right. What will you do as Prime Minister to win
That's why
back
they
the
like
support of
JT,
that
because
age
they
group?
legalized the weed,
Thanks, Hannah.
the
Maybe
marijuana.
the debate so far is indicative of why young people are not supporting the Liberals right
And it
now.
ain't
Because we're
gonna.
not talking about the issues that matter to them. We talked a little bit about housing, but that's one of the biggest challenges that young people are facing right now. My plan to really supercharge our housing investments, but also to ensure that young people
You
can
don't
actually
need to
enter the
legalize
housing market will make a
marijuana.
difference in that regard. We're not talking about the cost of living, on how challenging it is to be a young person these days, and the dream of owning a home or having that prosperity that's just not there. And if I can be honest, one of the things that we did was we lost trust of younger people because we weren't focused on the issues that mattered to them. And so my pledge as Prime Minister is to ensure that I am building a future for you as young people and for future generations.
Thank you, Ms. Gould. Frank Bayless, you're up next.
So for young people, there's a few things that are critically important. First of all, let's talk about education. We've done something very silly.
Don't
By the way,
need
my
to
1 minute is not
legalize
on. It should be on.
marijuana.
Okay.
It's
Sorry about
against the
that.
rules.
Yeah.
Sandy, we
There
have to
we go.
listen.
There we go.
And you'll get those extra seconds.
No problem. So what I was going to say is that, first of all, I want to see real investments in our universities. We've been squeezing our universities, and quite frankly, that's the dumbest thing we should be doing because that's the foundation of an advanced economy. So I want young people to know that I will be completely supporting your education. Second thing is, they are the ones that are going to find it hardest to buy a home. So we need to help them buy a home. And there's two things we can do. Well, there's many things, but two things that I'm proposing is to increase the amount for the first home savings account. It hasn't kept up with inflation and that. So we need to increase the amount of money that people can put aside so they can buy a home. And the second thing we need to do is really keep the investments going, which have been lacking for so long, in social housing. The government's got out of social housing, and there's a knock-on effect that affects everybody when that happens. So we need to get back into social housing. We need to help young people buy their homes. And what we need to do, when I get the government in order, what will happen is you'll have more money in your pocket. It'll take a little bit of time, but you will be able to buy a home.
Ms. Freeland, your 1 minute is now.
Well, I was there in 2015. I had been a backbench MP for 2 years, and I remember how electric that campaign was. And the reason we won, at the heart of it, was
legalized weed.
We recognized the pain that middle-class Canadians,
No,
including
don't.
young Canadians, were feeling. And we recognized and identified that Stephen Harper led a lackluster recovery from the 2008 financial crisis. We pointed that out and we said we are going to invest for jobs and growth. Today, we need to do the same thing and we need to focus on affordability for young people. I have a plan to do that. Cut taxes for first-time home buyers, cut taxes for the middle class, 100,000 new childcare places, cap credit card fees. We need to be there for young Canadians.
Sounds free to me.
That they can know if they work hard, study hard in the free trade schools I will offer them, they can have a great Canadian middle-class life.
Mr. Carney, you're next.
Okay. Are we going to talk about housing?
We're getting there.
Okay, good. Because housing is central to this, but I want to add to the opportunity set for younger Canadians, which has shrunk in recent years. Let's expand it. Let's expand it in all aspects of what we're doing. First and foremost, it's a time to build, as Ms. Freeland just said, focus on infrastructure, building this economy out. There is a huge range of opportunities that comes, as I say, for the next 25 years, being in the trades, fantastic if we follow through with the promise there. That's the first. The second is, as Mr. Bayless said, let's look at our universities. Their funding is being squeezed and has been squeezed, and it's been made up by having foreign students. That's come to an end. We need to be there for our universities or we're going to miss the opportunity. Thirdly, we need broad-based skills training. The federal government has a role there. We need to leverage AI and others to deliver.
Okay, we are going into a 5-minute debate now. And Ms. Gould, I'm going to start with you again on this one. This is from a Liberal in Ontario, Carissa. She's asked the question in this survey, how do you plan to make owning a home, and there comes the question about home ownership, feel like a possibility to those stuck in renter's land?
Thank you, Carissa, for that question. So there are two parts of my comprehensive plan on housing. One, create an industrial housing strategy so that we can build millions of new homes. We can use modular homes, we can invest in co-op housing, but also to increase the first-time home buyers incentive. Right now, it's about 5 to 10%. I want to increase that to 50%, so that first-time home buyers can
Just
actually
don't stand in the
get
hallway
into
naked,
the market,
okay?
build
Quiet,
equity,
Tandy,
and
for a
buy
sec.
back that equity over time.
Okay.
But I want to pick up quickly on the last question, because I was actually a young person in 2015, and I was excited about what the Liberal Party of Canada was offering, and I was excited about Justin Trudeau's leadership. And you know why? Because it was a bold, ambitious plan for our country. It was progressive. We were going to fight. We fought climate change. We talked about new ideas to move this country forward. And the way that we're going to bring young people back to the party is not by being conservative light and not by being unambitious for Canada. It's going to be by having bold ideas for this country where Canadians feel inspired and hopeful about the future that we're going to have. That's what young people are looking for. They're looking for a hopeful future where those opportunities exist. And, you know, I'm not quite still a young person, although I'm younger. You know, it's that energy, that drive, that optimism for the future that is going to build the best country in the world.
Ms. Freeland, you're up next, please.
So first of all, I want to say, Carissa, thank you very much for being involved and for asking that question. I hear that question from so many younger people who are just frustrated, that they're worried that they've lost out on getting into the housing market, and maybe the kind of life that their parents had is not going to be available to them. It is absolutely essential for us as a country that we say, we're not going to let that happen. And if young Canadians work hard, have a good job, studied hard, and they want to own a home, we have to make that dream of home ownership achievable. I have a plan to do it. It starts with cutting taxes for first-time home buyers to give them a leg up in the housing market. I'm so glad to hear so many people mentioning the first home savings account. I introduced that as finance minister. I think it is a great way for young people to save for that first home, and I would increase the amount of money that people can put in that first home savings account. Free trade school is going to help people get that first home too, because it will mean there are more skilled tradespeople to build those first homes people need. And then finally, I just want to say, some people are going to want to buy their own home. Some people want to live in affordable housing or maybe a co-op. I lived in a co-op. One of my aunts still lives in the co-op she and my mom helped build. There is, though, someone in Canada who does not believe in affordable housing, who does not believe in co-ops. Pierre Poilievre has actually called them Soviet-style housing. And so we all need to be very, very clear. We must defeat him because some Canadians need affordable housing too.
Mr. Bayless, you're up next.
So I feel for these young people. When I look at the house prices, I shake my head and think, my gosh, when I was buying a house, I thought it was hard, and my first home was $195,000. It's almost shameful to say that now. But back then, buying a home was about 4 times your salary, your annual salary. It's gone up to now 10 times your salary. So what are we going to do about that? Well, we're not going to bring house prices down again. So we need to get your salaries up, and we need to get more money in your pocket, and we need to bring the cost of living back in line. So what I'm proposing to do is, there's a number of technical issues which I've listed on my website, but in a general sense, I would say to young people, start saving. If I become Prime Minister, I'll get to work on the economy. I'll create the good jobs that you need, just like I've done in my own businesses. You'll have more money in your pockets, and we'll get the cost of living under control. And in a few years, with the home saving plans and that, you will be able to buy a house. So please do not lose hope on that.
Okay, Mr. Carney, I'm going to end this segment on you, please.
Okay, so we need to double the rate of home building in this country. That 10 times salary point, we need to double the rate in order to even have the places for those people. We obviously need to get those incomes up at the same time. So there's 2 questions here. How do we get the rate of home building going from $250,000 a year to $500,000?
I'm sorry, Rick.
We're going to need changes to how we build homes, much more technology, much more modular homes. We're going to need a big surge, as was just mentioned, in tradespeople who can build those homes. We're going to need to cut the fees in municipalities for developers. The federal government has a role to play there. We have a Housing Accelerator Fund that's working. I would supercharge that as part of this. And then on the other side of the equation, we need to make it more affordable, particularly for young people, to buy those homes. Now, removing GST on first-time home purchases, that's 5% off the home, which is a substantial proportion of the down payment. There's other financing mechanisms that come with that. But in the end, and let me finish on this will come back to our ability to build a strong economy. It's not just building the homes, it's building the strong economy so people can catch up.
We're going to move on to our next segment. It's not the segment, another theme, but this is an important topic. Canadians are worried they can't access a doctor or a nurse. What would you do as Prime Minister, working with the provinces, of course, because it is provincial jurisdiction, and territories, to help solve this issue? And Mr. Carney, you're
Sandy, we got to be quiet.
Well, this is a crucial
Sorry.
issue. Across the country, virtually without exception, in fact, I would say without exception, access to a doctor, in many cases access to a healthcare professional, is not possible. Healthcare is a right in Canada. We are not living up to our commitments. And this is not as simple as saying, I'm not saying you implied this, that it's a provincial jurisdiction. So first and foremost, we have to meet our responsibilities as the federal government in terms of the healthcare transfers, but we have to do a lot more. We have to make sure, and we should be part of this, that healthcare professionals can move across this country as readily. So a nurse in Quebec can go to Alberta, can go to Northwest Territories, and practice immediately. We have to make it easier for foreign health professionals to work more rapidly. We have to increase productivity in the health sector. Mr. Bayless has ideas on that, including on portable data, portable health records, which are crucial, but a broader use of AI, and us, last point, us as the federal government, accelerating those changes to deliver what Canadians deserve as Canadians, and we're nowhere closer.
Ms. Gould, you have 1 minute on the clock now.
Thank you. My goodness. I mean, this is something that every Canadian has experienced. The anxiety of not being able to have a family doctor, or worried. And what we're seeing across the country is emergency rooms that are closed or that are understaffed, and hallway medicine. This is absolutely a provincial jurisdiction, but the federal government has an important role to play in two regards. When it comes to health transfers, we need greater accountability from provinces, not to the federal government, but to their own citizens on the outcomes and the outcomes that they expect to deliver for their citizens. And then when the federal government can do is convene provinces and territories and colleges to ensure that our healthcare workers can travel across the country, but we also expeditiously can recognize foreign-trained doctors and healthcare professionals so that every Canadian has access to a family doctor and the medical specialist that they need when they need it.
Mr. Bayless, your 1 minute is on the clock.
So I've spent 40 years of my career in the healthcare industry, and I can give you examples where I've walked through emergency rooms, down the hallways, and I've seen people in gurneys up and down there, and it's broken my heart. So I'm absolutely committed to fixing the healthcare system. What we need is a change in paradigm. Our system was designed in the 1960s when population generally was younger, and it was designed for acute care. Now we have a chronic care problem. So we need to redesign our system to treat chronic care. Presently, there's only 2 doorways into the system. If you're lucky, you have a family doctor, and if you're not, what do they tell you to do? Go to the emergency room. So what I want to do is open 3 more doors into the system. I want to go to pharmacists, first of all, and expand their scope of practice. They can do so much, I want them to do a lot more, which they're trained to do. Number 2, I want to train 6,000 nurses to become what we call nurse practitioners. That would allow them to do almost as much as a doctor and have them staffed across the country. And finally, I want to invest in home care.
And Ms. Freeland, 1 minute for you as well.
Well, thank you, Hannah. And I want to start by thanking the great, hardworking people in the Canadian healthcare system. A few days ago, I spoke to a nurse practitioner. Her name was Kathy in Riding Mountain. Hi, Kathy. I hope you're listening. She's a Liberal. And she talked to me about how much she loves her job and cares for her patients, but how much of a strain the strain on the healthcare system imposes on her, too. So thank you very much. We do have to make it better. We have to make it better by training more doctors, nurses, nurse practitioners here in Canada, by recognizing foreign credentials and by allowing credentials to be portable across the country, by inviting the great doctors and nurses, Canadian ones, in the US who want to come home, encouraging them to come home, making it possible. And finally, we need to be clear with Canadians who care about their healthcare system. You cannot trust Pierre Poilievre with our universal single-payer healthcare system. All he believes in is cuts, 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 and that is one of the things that motivates me as a Liberal to defeat the Conservatives in the next election.
We are going to go into an open debate section here on this. And Mr. Bayless, yes, I will start with you on this one. Okay. I want to ask a follow-up question on it. Is it simply a question of money when it comes to healthcare and transfer payments, increasing that money, because I know provinces would love to have more money for healthcare, or does the structure of the healthcare system need to change?
So a few years ago, the federal government announced something like $40 billion more in healthcare spending, and nobody went, great, finally it's solved. We all shook our heads and said, great, we're just shoveling more money into the fire, because we do need to change the paradigm. Now, the wonderful thing I can tell you is that I have seen the technologies that can do that develop right here in Canada. I'm working with one company I'm supporting, and that they've developed is amazing in terms of electronic medical records, using artificial intelligence to wrap around and read all your records anywhere they are and produce reports accordingly. I've seen other AI developments in Canada again, where they allow doctors to spend a lot less time note-taking, in fact, no time note-taking, and everything collaged, put together for them, and doctors can be doctors. So we have the technology here. We have the ability to go forward here. This is what I'm going to bring to the healthcare system. And when I'm done, we are going to have the best healthcare system in the world. Believe it.
Ms. Gould, you're next on this one.
Thank you, Hannah. Look, universal health care and timely access to our health system is something that every Canadian deserves and should have. And it was a Liberal government that put universal health care in place. We can be very, very proud of that legacy. However, when it comes to the actual system, it is the provinces and the territories that manage and deliver care. The federal government provides transfers, but what we don't do enough of, and while I support the increase in transfers that we didn't have enough accountability for where that money was going. It can go into the general revenues of provinces and territories, and we have no way of knowing how that money is spent. And again, it's not to be accountable to the federal government, it's to be accountable to citizens. Citizens deserve to know how that money is being spent and what the outcomes they can expect are. One of the things that I did with the childcare agreements is that all of that money was contingent on specific objectives and outcomes for provinces and territories. That's what we need in healthcare. Canadians deserve timely access to a doctor. They deserve to have a family doctor or a primary care physician. And they deserve to know that when they get sick, when they need the healthcare system, it's there for them. Because our healthcare workers are working around the clock. They are doing everything they can to provide patients the care that they need, but the system itself needs to be modernized. The federal government can convene the provinces and territories. We can work with them to develop those objectives and those outcomes. But at the end of the day, it is the provinces and territories that are responsible for the delivery of health care, and they must be accountable to their citizens for how they are doing that.
Mr. Carney, you're up next, please.
So look at the service that we've received from our healthcare professionals over the course of the last 5 years. The enormous strains of working under the pandemic. Then the enormous strains that come after that on these professionals who are there at the front lines for us day in, day out, through the night, of a system that is short on resources, a system that has chronic care challenges as we age. We have a responsibility as the federal government to be part of the solution here. And we have an opportunity to make a systemic change because of technology. And if we have an openness, the provinces have an openness to use that in a way that empowers nurse practitioners, pharmacists, doctors, to provide a broader range of services to more people, more effectively. Last point. The federal government can help with that transition, can help with the leverage, and can help drive that change.
Ms. Freeland.
Sorry. Well, Hannah, you asked, does money matter? And I do think it's really important for Liberals in particular to be clear, money does matter and money helps. And so I was really glad to be finance minister when we stepped up federal government support for the healthcare system, $200 billion. We saw that the healthcare system was under unbearable strain after COVID and that Canadians were suffering, and we stepped up and we made that commitment. I think we also have some real opportunities. Technology is a huge enabler, and I have seen in Toronto, at the University of Toronto, some amazing AI technologies being used to deliver better care in emergency rooms, better care for people after surgery. And not only is the care better, it costs less money and takes less time of trained healthcare professionals. So there are real opportunities. But I just want to conclude by saying something about the provinces. I think that transparency, is the winning ticket here. And having real transparency on healthcare outcomes across the country would help all Canadians, and it would help Canadians to see what's working and what isn't. But I do want to say to the premiers of the provinces and territories, I respect your work running the healthcare systems. It's really, really hard. And as Prime Minister, I would work really collaboratively with you and would recognize you want a healthcare system that works too, and you are the ones who are running it.
We are going to give 15 seconds to Ms. Gould and 15 seconds to Mr. Bayless before moving into the next theme.
Great, thank you. So first of all, my job as Prime Minister is to stand up for Canadians, whether that is to the opposition or whether that is to premiers. Of course, I would work collaboratively, but you have a responsibility to your citizens to deliver healthcare effectively. But one thing that I think all of us agree on this stage is protecting our public healthcare system. Pierre Poilievre is in the pockets of people who want to privatize our healthcare system for profit. That is not something that I think any Liberal stands for. We will protect our universal healthcare system for Canadians.
Frank Baylis.
So in the 1960s, when the system was designed, if you were unlucky enough to have diabetes, heart disease, cancer, you passed away much earlier. Today, we have extended your life expectancy. Now with that, that's the paradigm change that we need. Our system wasn't designed to look after those people, so we need to readapt it, redesign it to look after those people. That's how we'll have better healthcare, and it'll actually cost less.
Okay, I want to thank you for that third theme. We're going to move into our final theme of this evening. It has been whipping by, I must say. And this is, again, a one-minute question for everyone. And it is, again, a question from one Liberal from Alberta. Her name's Rhonda. She says, are you keeping, and we did hear this in the French debate last night, but not in the English so far, are you keeping or getting rid of the consumer tax? But to that, most of you here have supported this marquee government policy for years. If you agree with ending it, why do you agree with ending it now? So I am going to start with Mr. Carney on this one.
Thank you, Hannah. Thank you, Rhonda, for this question, fellow Albertan. Yes, I support ending the consumer carbon tax, and to be absolutely clear, that's on consumers, it'd be on small businesses, it'd be on farms as well. The reason I do is twofold. One, politics is about people, and this has become too divisive for Canadians. Okay? Secondly, the contribution of the consumer carbon tax is a little less than 10% of our emissions reductions. I've spent a substantial portion of my career working on these issues, and there are better ways to accomplish those emissions reductions, particularly on my proposal, is that big polluters will pay Canadians, not taxpayers, big polluters will pay Canadians for their emission reductions and will improve the options for and the ability of those companies, who are some of our most important companies, to get their own emissions down.
Okay, we're going to come back and debate this more, but Ms. Freeland, you are next with 1 minute.
Well, since we're talking about climate action, I do want to start by recognizing the role that I think history is going to judge very positively that Prime Minister Trudeau has played on climate action. He is the first Canadian Prime Minister to really move the dial. And under his leadership, we have become a country where the economy is growing while emissions are going down. That is a huge accomplishment for our children and grandchildren. On the consumer price on pollution, I was the first candidate to come out and say I would lift that. And the reason is really simple. Democracy is about listening to people. And Canadians were very clear with us in conversations with me that they didn't think that policy worked for them. What we need is carrots. We need incentives to double down on the incentives I put in place, the Canada Growth Fund, the investment tax credits, to create a green transition that delivers jobs and growth for the Canadian economy. I know that we can do that, and I know that that's what Canadians need. And if we let Pierre Poilievre be elected, that will be the end of climate action in Canada.
Okay, we're on the 1 minute segment, and Mr. Baylis, you're up next.
Thank you. So I will implement a climate policy that will have a direct and tangible impact on fighting climate change. And it's going to be recognized, as we've all heard before, polluter pays model. And everyone is going to do their share, industries and individuals. Look, there's a cost to having our garbage collected. There's a cost to having water treatment plants. And we're happy to pay those costs because we have clean earth and we have clean water. And there will be a cost to having clean air. Anyone who tells you there's no cost to it is not being honest with you. So to answer your question about this carbon tax, presently it's not working because what it's doing is just circulating money around. So I'm going to adapt it. And what we're going to do is attack the problem directly. So I'm going to invest funds into programs and Canadian companies that are going to bring forth solutions to fight climate change directly.
And Karina Gould, you have said that you are not going to scrap the consumer carbon tax, that you will stop the increase in April. Maybe discuss that a bit.
Sure. Well, politics is also about leadership, and it's also about conviction. And I'm not going to abandon the fight against climate change because Pierre Poilievre is telling us to do that. I'm a mom of 2 young kids. I cannot leave a planet that is burning to them. I got into politics in 2015 because I wanted to be part of a government that fought climate change. And we did that. And we did that to great effect. And I am proud of that record. But I hear Canadians when they say that this policy is something that is challenging for them. And you know what? We didn't do a good job of talking about it. And when they are talking about the carbon tax, what are they talking about? They're talking about affordability. That's why we need a real affordability plan. It's not that they're against fighting climate change or they're against protecting the environment, but that also means that if you don't have the price on pollution, you don't have the rebate checks that millions of Canadians depend on every single year. If you have a plan to fight climate change, you also need to have a plan to fight affordability.
Yeah, we are okay. Yeah. Let's just get right into the debate because Mr. Carney, go.
I want to pick up on that point, last point, and really go to Pierre Poilievre. The difference between Pierre Poilievre's approach here: axe the tax. He's got the T-shirt. He's got the slogan. That's all he do. He doesn't care about the rebate checks disappearing. He doesn't care about our businesses becoming more competitive. We started this evening talking about the absolute need for our country to diversify our trade, to build with new allies. Climate change, addressing climate change, and I've spent a huge part of my career addressing it, both in terms of policy and leading the largest clean energy investor in the world, okay? But a big part of climate change is about the economic opportunity. We will not have access to the European market unless we make the progress here. So we have to do 2 things. We have to supercharge some of the programs that have been put in place, so businesses are getting their emissions down. We are a clean energy superpower, and we have to make all of those households whole on the rebate checks that they will no longer receive. That requires a middle-class tax cut. It requires additional measures, including, final point, polluters paying those households so their energy is more affordable and cleaner.
We have 2 minutes and 30 seconds on the clock, and we're going to have to stick to this. So I want to get through all of you. Ms. Freeland first.
Rhonda, you asked something very specific. What was the moment when I recognized that we needed a different approach? And I can tell you very specifically what that moment was. It was a meeting I had with Wab Kinew, the Premier of Manitoba, really shortly after he was elected. And he is a great progressive leader in, I would say, the tradition of prairie progressives. He says the economic horse has to pull the social cart. I love that. And he said to me, I believe in climate action, but I've just been through an election and the people of Manitoba are telling me that the way the consumer price on pollution works doesn't work for them. Can I do a deal with the federal government where we hit our targets, but we do it in a different way? And that, to me, is leadership. Leadership is listening to people. It is not being inflexible and not telling people what their lives are like, but hearing them. And so I really believe if we want climate action, which is essential, we have to listen to Canadians. And if we fail to do that, the threat is, the danger is that Pierre Poilievre will be elected and he will dismantle all of the excellent work we have done on climate. We have to recognize that. We have to show Canadians we hear them and that we're listening to what they tell us rather than telling them what they should be thinking.
Okay, I'm going to jump in there because we do have to stick to time now. Ms. Gould, you're up next.
Thank you so much. So just a couple of things with respect to my colleagues. Literally the whole reason why we have the carbon tax backstop is because premiers across this country decided they didn't want to participate. So if Manitoba wants to participate, then the consumer price on carbon from the federal government disappears. That's what happens in Quebec. That's what happens in British Columbia. With respect to Mark and the middle class tax cut, the math just doesn't add up. If you are a middle class individual, that tax cut is looking at about $800 a year. The carbon rebate for a family of 4 is $1,200 a year, and it doesn't help low income or no income Canadians. So it is really important to have a real conversation with Canadians. And if you don't have a plan for those checks, then we don't have a plan for affordability.
I'm going to come to you now, Mr. Bayless. We are going to go into the 1-minute segment, but it's a good follow-up to this. I know you wanted to jump in. To maximize Canada's energy advantage, new pipelines or other energy infrastructure probably is required here. What is your plan for that? And do you feel there is the private interest to get it done? Because a lot of private interest has now just gone, nope, not interested anymore.
So I have an energy security plan which I've announced, and it's going to do a number of things. First of all, as I mentioned, we're going to build 2 pipelines. And why private industry is not interested is because what happens is every time a new government comes in, they change all the rules. There's no certainty. So my idea here is that the federal government will take on the responsibility of having the approvals for the 2 corridors. We'll work with the provinces and we'll work with the Indigenous communities, get all the approvals in place, and then go to tender so people can know with certainty that they can build these 2 pipelines. That's one area of energy security. Another one is I want to invest heavily in nuclear energy, small modular reactors. Canada used to be a world leader with our CANDU reactors and nuclear energy. We have to retake that position. Third thing I want to do is invest in transmission lines. We don't have transmission lines going across the whole country. With the electrification of our economy, we're going to need those. So those were 3 points I want to bring to the table.
Frank Bayless, thank you kindly for that. And Mark Carney, you're up next.
I'll go back to where we started. We're in a crisis. We need to act. We need to act to build this economy, and part of those actions is, or should be, around our energy sector. I would convene as part of First Minister's discussion of the projects of national interest, which would include both clean and conventional energy, would include pipelines, getting consensus around those projects that we're going to move forward on. Because we are a federation, we need multiple levels of government, but we need speed, and we need the federal government to move with speed. We also need to do, and we can do, and can lead in areas such as carbon capture and storage. We can lead in displacing the 70% of oil in eastern Canada that comes from the United States that is using the money to threaten us. So this is part of a bigger set of opportunities for Canada. I'd help to lead those changes, and I would do it right from the start.
Ms. Freeland, your 1 minute starts.
I do want to go back to the critical moment our country is facing, to the existential threat that President Trump poses to our economy
I still might come back and ask you, though.
We haven't touched on something really important to Canada, and that actually is an integral part of our energy security future and is a really positive story. And that is Indigenous participation in energy projects. One of the things I was so proud to be able to do as finance minister is create a $5 billion Indigenous loan guarantee program to allow Indigenous direct participation, ownership of natural resource projects, energy projects. This is transformational for Canada. And I think that we really need to embrace the fact that we are a country that can move forward with Indigenous prosperity, and we are a country whose path to reconciliation can include Indigenous people in Canada being partners in building the energy security we need today more than ever.
Okay, thanks. And I will come back with that other question. So I'm going to go back to my original question in this debate. How will you differentiate yourself from Prime Minister Trudeau?
Sure. Let me just first start by saying that I think it's wonderful what you raised, Christia. It's just that Indigenous reconciliation is about more than a relationship with natural resources. And this is something that I think we can be extraordinarily proud of, the legacy that Prime Minister Trudeau has put in place when it comes to reconciliation. And we need to be very mindful that a Pierre Poilievre-led Conservative government will back away and backtrack on this really important relationship that Canada has with Indigenous peoples. And I also just want to say that I'm actually really proud of a lot of the work that we did as a government, whether it was the Canada Child Benefit that has lifted over 500,000 kids out of poverty, the early learning and childcare agreements, or the work that we did on fighting climate change. I'm proud of that legacy and that record, and I think all Liberals can be proud of that. Where I see a big difference is in making sure that we stay and I stay connected to the grassroots. And this is something that as Liberals, I want to talk to you specifically about. We need to hear your voices. We need to hear your ideas, because it is always the Liberal membership, the Liberal grassroots that provides the next big idea for Canada and for Canadians. And so my pledge to you is to ensure that we have a robust and vibrant party that is connected in our communities, listening to Canadians and making sure that we can build that future that we want and lead Canada ambitiously into the 21st century.
So that's how you'll differentiate yourself from Mr. Trudeau?
I'm very proud of the record that we have. We've made some mistakes, absolutely. Nobody is perfect, but we've done a lot of good things for this country, and I think we need to build on that success. I can pinpoint the moment following the pandemic when inflation was getting out of control, and Canadians were saying to all of us collectively as a government, they were saying we need help with the cost of living, and we were too late to the game to address those real needs. Okay. My pledge to you is to listen to you and to respond to what your needs are today and for the future.
Thank you, Ms. Gould. Mr. Bayliss, you're up next. How will you differentiate yourself from Mr. Trudeau?
So I would say that I'm the candidate here that is the most distant from Mr. Trudeau. I was elected, it was over 6 years ago since I've been in the government. And then I was not a minister, so I've not been a minister with Mr. Trudeau's government, nor have I been an economic advisor. Where I will differentiate myself greatly is that I'll be focused much more on the economy. I'll be focused on creating wealth. I'll be focused on getting more money into Canadians' pockets. That's what I'm good at. I'm also going to look at building an innovation-based economy. So I really wanted to do that. That's going to be my main focus. You need both when you're in government. You need wealth creation and you need wealth redistribution. We've done a lot of wealth redistribution to the point that we're renouncing programs we can't even pay for. And we're letting programs such as healthcare fall apart. So what I want to do is get back in there. I'm a big supporter of these programs, so I want to make sure we have the funds to pay for them. That's going to be where I'm going to be much different from the previous government.
Okay, Mr. Bayliss, thank you for that. Mr. Carney, you're up next.
Thank you. Thanks for the question. Look, I'm different in the following respects. First, focus on the economy. Laser focus on the economy, and that means good jobs, people's wages growing faster than inflation. It means getting prices down. It means building homes. It means building a future for this country. Secondly, I'm much more hands-on. I'm much more of a hands-on person, hands-on manager. I focus on results and getting things done. Thirdly, And I've heard this. I'm fortunate to have support in the caucus. I hear directly from the supporters about more regular and two-way dialogue with the caucus. I meet with my supporters virtually during the course of this leadership campaign to hear their ideas, to hear their energy, to hear what's going on, what they're seeing on the ground, to share my perspectives in order to move forward.
Okay, and Ms. Freeland, I am going to come back to you on this one. I only have about 30 seconds on this. How would you differentiate yourself after being in the Justin Trudeau government for all of these years?
Well, first of all, we as Liberals have to be proud of the great things our government has done. National System of Early Learning and Childcare, Canada Child Benefit, support for seniors, CETA, NAFTA. We have done a lot, and we need to remind Canadians about that. But, you know, for me, this campaign has been a personal liberation, and I am my own person, and it is great. I personally do not believe in a style of leadership, which is a one-man band. I think that the best kind of leadership is collaborative and listening, and that's how I'm running my campaign. I believe that we have to be practical, and we have to focus on jobs and growth. Okay. But most importantly, I am a ferocious mother, and I will fight for Canada with the same ferocity that I fight for my kids. I will fight for your kids too. And the reason I am running is I am the leader who can stand up to Donald Trump and win.
Okay, we still have closing statements as well. So this is that opportunity for each candidate. I may have to take some time away because of that. And Ms. Freeland, you are chosen as number one to have your closing statement first. So your minute 30 is there. We might have to clip it a little bit.
Well, first of all, I do hope Donald Trump, who takes a keen interest in Canada, is watching this debate, because what he will hear from all the Liberals is, we believe in Canada, we are not going to capitulate, and we are going to fight for our country. And Canadians across the country are coming together to fight for Canada. Hockey fans are belting out "Oh Canada." Restaurants pulling U.S. wine from their menus. Snowbirds not flying south this winter. Our country is standing strong, smart, and united. I am so grateful to be here with 3 other Liberals who love Canada, and to have the chance to talk to 400,000 Liberals who love Canada too. Now, Pierre Poilievre, he actually agrees with Trump. They both say that Canada is broken. We know that's not true. We are leading a great wave of Canadian patriotism. Let's use that passion to make our amazing country even better. I know we can do it. Let's commit tonight, fight for Canada. All 4 of us on this stage, all of us Liberals, all of us Canadians. Together, we will win.
Chrystia Freeland, thank you so much for your closing statements. Now, Karina Gould, your time.
This is a critical time for our party and for our country, and we have to meet this moment. We will only win the next election by being Liberals, proudly, not Conservative light. Not by running from the progress we've made, not by putting forward ideas that just tinker around the edges. We deserve a leader who is honest with Canadians, who can unite us around big ideas, and who has the political experience to deliver real solutions to the problems we face. A leader with a track record of standing up to bullies, a leader who won't back down. I've always been someone who will stand by what I believe in, say what I mean, and fight for what is right. I've made the hard decisions and stood up for Canadians. I believe Canada is the best place in the world to start a family, grow a business, and build a future. Because we are a nation of dreamers and doers, creators and innovators. Because Canada is where opportunity, empathy, and progress walk hand in hand. I have a vision for Canada, one that will allow us to deal with the problems we face today and be ready for those we'll face tomorrow. It's time for a new generation of leadership that understands you and is focused on you. I'm here for Canada, today, tomorrow, and for years to come. I'm the leader for the future, and the future starts now. Thank you.
Karina Gould, thank you so much. Frank Bayless, you're up next.
Thank you. So Canada is a country of wide open spaces and big ideas. And with my plan, we will build a strong and resilient economy that will benefit all Canadians. We will improve our healthcare system, and it will become the best healthcare system in the world. We will modernize our federal government so they can deliver its services to our citizens in a very effective and efficient manner. And yes, we will repel and we will overcome the attacks of President Trump. Now, in the last 10 years, the world has changed profoundly. And now, as a country, we need to go in a new direction. As you look to choose your next leader, I would ask you to reflect on these 3 points. I have the best, most credible plan to build a strong, resilient economy. I'm best suited to defeat Pierre Poilievre and expose him for exactly what he is. He's a career politician who likes to make up slogans and nothing else. And I have the background, the experience, and the expertise to firmly stand up to President Trump. I will successfully defend our nation. I will defend it against his attacks on our economy, on our culture, and yes, our sovereignty. My fellow citizens, I represent that new direction. So let's be bold. Let's be ambitious. Together we will build a proud and prosperous Canada. My name is Frank Bayless, and to make this happen, I need your support.
Mr. Bayless, thank you so much for your closing statement. And finally, we go to Mark Carney.
Thank you, Hannah. Fellow Liberals, my fellow Canadians, from coast to coast to coast, you've told me that you're anxious in the face of an uncertain future. You've told me that you're looking for positive change, that you want a leader that bridges divides. You want a plan that defends our interests and creates opportunities for everyone. Every experience in my life, whether by accident or design, has led me to this moment. I'm ready. It's true, I'm not a career politician. I am a pragmatist who knows how to get things done. I've managed economic crises, built strong economies, and run tough negotiations. And this gives me the experience to lead Canada at this crucial time. We're facing a very different world to the one we've known all our lives. The Canadians are ready to unite and stand up for our country. We will seize this moment to win for Canada. I love our country. Canada has given me everything. My family, my education, my values. And in return, I'm ready to give everything for Canada. Thank you.
Okay, that brings us to the end of the English Liberal leadership debate. I want to thank all 4 candidates for a great job this evening. Voting does start tomorrow. I know. And then the announcement of the next leader of the Liberal Party will be made on March the 9th in Ottawa. So congratulations to all of you for putting your name in to do this, and look forward to seeing the results. Thank you kindly, and thank you for watching.
And thank you, Hannah.
I guess I will. What a bunch of hogwash. Sandy.
Laugh.
Money. That was a new one. Poverty costs money. I thought it was money that caused poverty because, the carbon tax, because that's such a great deal, right? Yeah, I I thought, well, that's a good one. And they're talking about building these modular homes, which have no resale value. Yep. Yeah, I mean, I told you before, I lived in one. Well, I paid for it and I had it built, but when I went to resell it, there was no resale value. It's their trailer park. No, no, and you still have to lease the land. Okay, you have land tax, but I mean, still, and I didn't hear anything new. Nobody wants to get rid of the carbon tax. Or we're giving you back more. Okay, you don't have to give us anything back if you don't take it away in the first place. Was. But none of them really stood up and said anything different. They're still going the same playbook as Trudeau. No, that's all I can see. And I don't like Gould. Gould has no gumption. She stands there like a wishy-washy.
None of them do.
No, none of them do. But carbon tax, I guess it's better to save the planet because we don't have the ozone thread anymore. Now we've moved on to cows farting.
Well, so I think that this has been far from a robust leadership race.
Hello?
That's first of all. Out of what's presented to us, I think my leaning is towards the bailiff character guy, the tall one, the one who can speak French better than the rest of them. I'll be honest, I did not watch tonight's debate. I watched yesterday's debate in French, and I cringed for 2 hours straight out of the French that was coming out of these candidates. And Frank won on that aspect, and for that reason, he'll get my vote. But I'll close with saying that the true leader of the Liberal Party it's Justin Trudeau, and he's going to find a way to wiggle his way in there. He's not going anywhere. Yep. I think he's going to continue on.
Oh, I hope not.
It's his party. So it'd be something like it'd be he'll step down now, but he'll be up in the next election 4 years from now after totally do that then. So if I'm correct in thinking, with everything that's been developing over the last, 4 years, let's say, even further than that, but development saying that if this is the end of like Justin Trudeau, like on March 9th, if he's done because of everything that's happened, for some reason I'm thinking he's still got a twist. But if it's his final days, then I can totally see him running in the next election, and he'll win it because he's the true leader of the Liberal Party. He's the guy. Because none of these candidates even stand Trudeau. He's much more manly than these people. All these candidates they're all weaklings in comparison to Trudeau. Like, who are these people?
But you're saying Trudeau's manly.
Hell yeah.
He's a weak person.
Huh.
Hello?
He's got
Hello?
a lot of that guy.
Only recently.
Hello?
It's his party. In my eyes, because I've been following this, I'm a lifelong voter. I'm Gen X. I know enough to know enough. It's his party. That's all I gotta say. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love if
Hello?
If just so.
Hello? I hope not. I hope we've seen the last of them.
If ever showed up to my house in an election bid to gain his vote, I would tell him, sir, go for it. Do it. It's yours.
I wouldn't.
Muted.
Does it spark a debate at all? Or is it just a shutdown idea?
I am trying to get my microphone to work.
Justin
Am I still
Trudeau
muted
is
or
the
what?
True leader of the Liberal Party.
Can anybody hear me? This audio issue tonight is bizarre.
I don't know. I was there when his father was there. I didn't like him, and I didn't like him, Justin,
Okay,
either.
I'm back.
Well,
I don't like any of them.
I didn't like Pierre Trudeau either for what he did
Hello?
either.
Yep.
Who? Somebody's saying
Trudeau.
hello on the line. And can anybody hear
Hello?
me at this point?
I can hear you, Rick. It's Rimby John out of Western Canada, Alberta.
Okay, all right. I've got my audio back. Oh my goodness. Go ahead, John.
Well,
Really?
welcome everybody. Pretty boring debate tonight. I much preferred the sleepy Joe Biden in the ice cream shop with Trump, and then the Hillary Clinton one before that was good with the Trumpster.
God.
Well,
Hello?
Steve was saying that he thinks that Justin is going to find a way to stick around. I think that he's going to take a break. He'll be back at some point. I don't know exactly when, but we haven't seen the last of him, in my view. He's still too young, and he's a political
True. He's
kid,
a political.
you know, whatever. He's just his whole family is about politics at this point. That's all he knows, really.
He's the Chad.
Yeah.
He's the politics.
So.
I don't know. I disagree. I don't want to see him anymore.
Well, it's not about what we want. It's about you know, his position in the party, his name.
Hello?
Hello, Sandy. Welcome back.
Thank you.
You sound like you're in a tin can again, Rick.
Hi, Sandy.
Oh, okay.
I don't want Justin either. He's an idiot.
Yeah.
He doesn't know how to do his math.
Well, we're still waiting for the budget to balance itself.
Yeah, we all are. And we're sick of it.
I'd like to know how that works because mine won't do it by itself.
Neither does mine. It's like Groundhog Day over and over and over again.
That should fix my audio now, John.
Sandy, love from Alberta. You just need a rich husband, Sandy. That's all you need.
I don't need a rich husband because then I'd be doing his chores.
Depends how rich he is.
Hi,
I thought the debate. I thought the debate
to meet
tonight.
you, John from Alberta. Finally.
Well, we love you, Sandy. I thought the debate tonight, Rickster, and I thought it was nobody interrupted anybody. There was no fire, brimstone.
Oh my gosh! I think I was the.
Sandy, you were the only one with fire and brimstone on the thing. You know, even Sleepy Joe fights
I had
back in the
fuel
ice cream
the
shop.
fire in the chat. I was fueling the fire in the chat.
You certainly were doing that tonight, Sandy. Yes, you were. Go ahead there, John. Finish up your thought.
Well, and I just with breaking news, Rick, from Trump world, orangutan land at the zoo. I just got something pushed through the Senate tonight or the House. 4.5 trillion in tax reductions an hour ago, and 2 trillion reduction in spending. Another major win for the Trumpster, the 2,800-pound orange gorilla in the China shop.
That's exactly what he is, an orange orangutan.
And the vote was very, very close. But Rickster, I do need to say, Rick, this is Don Lemon Pie calling in. Is this not the Megyn Kelly show? And you can go fuck yourself there, Megan. I mean, Rickster.
Oh my goodness, I have that clip. Do you want to see that clip tonight,
You did.
folks?
I want to see it. I like the
let me
lemon.
cue that up. Here it
lemon,
comes.
Don Lemon.
Here it
is.
is.
It rodeo driver rodeo?
Here we go.
Mr. Tough Guy.
Here's the Don Lemon clip.
I love you, Isabel.
I love you.
So let me just say to Megyn Kelly, in my 30-some years as a journalist and my 50-some years as a person of color,
Nobody really
go fuck
wants
yourself.
to talk about Justin.
Okay?
You can't interrupt him. Guys, you got to be quiet. You're interrupting the Don Lemon punchline.
I usually don't like to talk about her because she's one of those people. She
Guys,
thrives
Sandy.
on it. She has built the second part of whatever of her career on being a troll. So this is what Megyn Kelly said about Joy Reid, right?
So that we can
And
actually
remember,
hear
Joy
it.
Reid is a woman. Megyn
Here we
Kelly's a woman. So let me just say to Megyn Kelly, in my
Sandy,
30-some years as
you
a
need to
journalist
just
and my
pause for a
50-some
moment,
years
okay,
as a
so that we
person
can
of
hear
color,
this?
go
Okay.
fuck yourself. Okay? So let me just say to Megyn Kelly, in my 30-some years as a journalist and my 50-some years as a person of color, go fuck yourself. Okay? I usually don't like to talk about her because she's one of those people. She thrives on it. She has built the second part of whatever of her career
Now imagine
on
Megyn
being
Kelly
a troll. So
telling
this is
that
what Megyn Kelly said
Negro
about
to go-
Joy Reid, right?
Oh.
And
Right.
remember, Joy Reid is a woman. Megyn Kelly's a woman. She's supposed to be all about women and, supports women. Okay, so this is what she said. Remember when Joy Reid laughingly mocked white women tears as pathetic and offensive to her? Who's crying now, Joy? Good riddance to the absolute worst person on television, and shame on NBC for letting it go on this long. And she has she is an axe to grind when it comes to MSNBC, and also, this whole, she's racist, right? It's just, I'm gonna give you the evidence. Supposedly learned from it and then spent every day after apologizing for it and being fired for it, then spent every day proving the point that she is a racist. And not very supportive of women. If you look, all you have to do, the evidence is in her Google search and what she says about women and how she calls them out all the time.
Negroes are also racist.
Don Lemon is a doll.
The worst person. No, Megyn Kelly. The worst person on television was fired from NBC in the Today Show a few years ago, and that's Megyn Kelly. That's the worst person who's not on television anymore.
Nigger.
Is you.
Journalist.
No, Rickster.
What
it's
did you
Rick
just say,
Walcott.
Steve? What did you just say, Steve?
I said Negroes are just as racist as whites.
No, not all
What
of
was
them,
the other word you
Steve.
just used there, my friend? What was that?
The hard R.
The what?
You're asking what I call the Negro, the slang word.
Yeah. What did
that?
you just? What word did you just use?
You know what it is?
I'm not sure I heard you correctly, but I'm checking.
I called that Negro.
Yeah.
The N word.
Oh God.
Oh, you did you?
Text in context to reverse the roles and imagine Megyn Kelly saying what he's saying. So like, put Megyn Kelly in
Like,
his
are
body
you here? Are you here to troll me tonight too?
and reverse the role.
Are you here to troll me tonight too? You really did that.
Here, what's the narrative being drawn out here?
See you later there, Stevie. Not
That
acceptable.
word is not necessary.
Unacceptable.
Absolutely not necessary, Steve.
Rick, it's Rimby, John.
Yeah.
You know what? I quite like Don Lemon.
Me too.
I've always had a soft spot for him. I think he's probably a pretty incredible journalist. Has he been over the line different times with Elon Musk, whatever? It's okay. I like the guy. I really do, and I'm very sad he got turfed from CNN because I think it's a darker world without Don Lemon. I really think it's a darker world.
Just hang on a minute. Steve, don't come back here. Do not come back to this channel. I don't want to see you in the chat. You don't ever call into this show again. If you call in, you'll just get kicked out. Ever.
Thank you,
And
Rick.
don't ever come visit me. Don't call me. Don't come anywhere near me. I want nothing to do with you. Nothing. You're dead to me. You come anywhere near me, and you're just don't exist. I want you. You are not welcome here. You're not welcome at my home. You're not welcome anywhere near me ever. You bigot.
Amen.
You racist, disgusting bigot. I'm so disgusted right now. That's not being a liberal or woke. That's just being a decent, regular human being. I will not tolerate it. I won't put up with it. I'm sick of the hatred and the bigotry that is bubbling up in our society. And I've known for a while that you harbor a lot of these kinds of thoughts and feelings and twisted, sick perspectives. You're disgusting. Don't ever come back here again. And don't ever come anywhere near me. You disgust me.
Excellent.
And anybody else, leave. Be gone. If that's the kind of person you are, you're not welcome here. That is a limit on free speech right there. That's not free speech. That's hate, just pure, vile hatred, and he knows it. And he did it on purpose.
Yeah, he did it on purpose.
Screw you. Well, Rick. Goodbye. That is enough. Enough. The line. There is a line, and you went way beyond it right there. Unacceptable. I will not tolerate it. I am so. You. Not here.
Well, Rick, there's one more name to add on that list. Unfortunately, it's Mouth of the South. Leo, you're not welcome in Alberta, my friend. The vile, disgusting things you've done to Rick behind the scenes and on your YouTube stuff that's unacceptable to me as a Christian, my family. Rick Walker has the most incredible show worldwide. The man has integrity, family values, media values. He doesn't go for the clicks. And I'm sorry, Rick, we got to add on Leo, Mouth of the South. I watched you, Leo, on some of your stuff after you left a year ago. And if I was Rick Walker, Leo, I would sue you for probably $15 million, like Trump did to George Stephanopoulos at ABC.
John, it's okay.
It's insulting to the Maverick News family, Rick.
We don't need to even acknowledge him or acknowledge what
I know, but
it's okay.
He came back on and he never even apologized to you. I'm insulted by it.
Thank you, but it's okay. Let's just move on.
Okay, let's move on.
Let's get back to the program and enough of this. Just don't even acknowledge it. Let's just move on.
Yeah, well said. We don't need trash.
Well, because Isabel, we have integrity.
That's what we pay our taxes for.
We have integrity, family values, and it's all good news. Yeah.
Yep.
I value your show so much, Rick. People in Alberta, we worldwide really value the hard work you do. You sacrifice time from your family and your wife, and you're on 7 days a week dedicated to providing truth, justice, and what's happening in the world. And I applaud you.
And the information that I can't find because I don't know where to research some things for, I appreciate that you get it for us. Plus the fact that you're always here at my dinner table. So I never eat alone. Look at all the people I have for company.
Isabel, I love you.
I can be feisty, but I'm not rude and I'm not bitter. I don't have time to be bitter.
Me too, and I'm not rude.
Nope. I mean, I will fight back like I did the other night with John.
We all need that.
But Isabel Rimby, you did it with integrity and values and compassion and not sympathy, empathy. You did it in a constructive way that you would talk to your brother at the breakfast table or dining room table. And I love you for that. Thank you.
Respect.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I need to also address the money, the $5 billion that I guess has been earmarked, and clarify some information on that, because I was not entirely accurate in the way that I portrayed that, and that is because the information that I originally received on it was not entirely accurate, and so I was repeating the information that I received after Justin Trudeau announced yesterday the $5 billion that is going to Ukraine. And the reason it's not accurate is because it's not the funds. The G7 countries have frozen, not exactly seized, they've frozen $300 billion in assets and money. And these are funds from Russian oligarchs and the Russian government, Russian business institution entities. And so the money that Canada is sending is from this fund that Canada has a portion of those funds frozen as well. They have not seized them outright for a bunch of legal reasons, and that is because they don't want to be accused of what Johnny actually suggested the other night, last night, is that they were not stolen, they're frozen, and then the interest from the frozen assets is actually the money that is going to be skimmed off, and that is what is going to Ukraine. Now, the Canadian government is not sending $5 billion outright. The funds are being sent over there over, I believe, in the release now in more detail that I have from the Prime Minister's office, over 5 years, including $50 million up front. And I'll have to dig into the actual figures as I sift through the full information coming out of the PMO's office. So it's coming out over a period of time, and it essentially amounts to like loans that are guaranteed by the Canadian government, and then the interest from these frozen assets then filters back into the system to replenish the loan payment. And so that's the plan over time. And it's not just a one-time $5 billion expenditure, but the Canadian government does actually guarantee and put the money up front in if there are funds that are not instantly available through this fund. And so it's a little bit of a complicated financial process that I can maybe explain in more detail even tomorrow night as I sift through it and get the full picture on it if people want me to explain further. But that being said, those funds are still not money that would go into the federal budget. But I want to clarify that because I did notice a couple of people talking about it in the chat tonight. And yes, they're quite right. I was not entirely accurate. And when I'm not accurate, I will issue a correction or if I get something wrong. So I wasn't entirely wrong, but I wasn't entirely accurate. And that's because the information that came out of the news conference initially and the first reports did not provide all of the details. But that's a more accurate assessment. I hope that helps people.
Yep. Rick,
Yes.
can I say something?
The
No.
floor is yours. Go ahead.
It's nice to meet you, John, from Alberta.
Love you, Sandy from Alberta. We love you. You're a real character, and you're a breath of fresh air, my dear. You were way better than the debate tonight.
Yeah, it was
That's gotta
somewhat
be-
entertaining.
That had to be the deadest debate. Like you were saying, nobody had any gumption. There was no fire. A lot of smoke, but no fire.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Yeah, there wasn't because they're all friends and they all think the same. So it's not going to matter who wins the leadership. They're all going to do the same darn thing in the end.
Maybe they all know each other.
well, and Krista can't be mad at Carney and Carney can't be mad at her because that's her godfather to her son.
That's right.
Oh,
yeah, they're
I
all
get
very
it now.
close. They're all friends. So yeah, not a lot of fire and brimstone there.
No, and nothing different. Nobody could admit what would they do different than Trudeau.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Isabel, you're so smart.
Only sometimes. I had my smart cookie today.
Well, you know,
You're
Sandy
a smart
and
cookie girl.
Sandy and Isabel and Richter and then Maverick News, at least the Americans with Trump and Biden, at least it was a little more fiery. And then Trump with Hillary Clinton. And I remember, it's an old joke, but I mean, at one of those Catholic dinners, Trump said, Hillary Clinton, you know, she bumped into me before the dinner and she said to me politely, "Could you pardon me?" Did you get that joke? Could you pardon me, Mr. Trump?
Well, on the U.S. side, especially with Trump on the scene, politics is a lot more entertaining, I think. But, you know, I'll say this, too. Once Trudeau does disappear, I guess after March 9th, even if only for a little while, I think that there's some people out there who are really going to miss him because they're going to miss the opportunity to love hating him. And some of these podcasters, live streamers who have built entire channels out of, you know, anti-Trudeau, F Trudeau basically videos every day. I don't know. They're going to have to find somebody to replace him in order to keep their audience. They're going to have to pivot to something else. It may not be that easy.
Rickster, it's called Pierre Poilievre to pivot to. Pierre Poilievre to pivot to. Our only choice. Yeah. And he's far from perfect, but it's Pierre Poilievre if you want Canada saved. Yes. Sorry.
Well, that's the way politics works, though.
That said F Trudeau, and I think that should have been against the law.
Well, yeah, it's too bad that politics kind of comes down to the dirty name calling.
The dirty.
You know, Sandy, Rimby, John, I do agree with you. There were a lot of F Trudeau and a lot of F Kenny out here, you know, Jason. And I would like to say, Rick, and we did talk privately about this, Isabel, Sandy, Maverick News, and Rickster. There's a lot of billboards now in Alberta about Alberta being the 51st state. I don't agree with that. I am an Albertan first, a Canadian second, but I got to clarify that big time. I want Canada to stay together. I will defend her to the end of the earth. Alberta just wants to be treated fairly at the table of Canada. We just want to be treated with fair and equity, no different than British Columbia on their lumber and fisheries, Ontario with their gold mining, uranium, Saskatchewan potash, gold. We just want to be treated in a fair, equitable manner, no trade barriers. And when I hear carbon tax Carney, and I talked to Dragon last week, he's shooting out of one side of his mouth in Kamloops, BC, about you're going to push all the pipelines through. And then he sits in a Quebec interview in Montreal 2 days later and says, no, to Alberta pipelines. Hold it. You know, that doesn't work. We have to work. We can't be Team Quebec. We can't be Team Alberta. We have to be Team Canada. And I think this is a big wake-up call. And I think, boys and girls, I really think it's a wake-up call in a good way. And the one thing carbon tax Coleman Carney said is the federal government of Canada immediately needs to give a state visit invitation to the president of Mexico. She's a lady and she's a very, very smart. She's a Melania Trump, but she's running Mexico. And we need to link together as an Oreo cookie and squeeze the big fat orange orangutan out of the China shop as a marshmallow, because when Mexico and Canada link together, the United States is done. I'm sorry. They are 99% on the edge of bankruptcy. They are that close on the cliff.
That's why John, that's why you called earlier to alert me to the story about the budget, and they've approved tonight a $2 trillion spending cut in their budget. He's embarking on an economic campaign of austerity, contraction, spending cuts.
Can I interrupt for a minute?
I guess you just did. Go ahead.
Okay. John, Alberta, we already had our pipeline project. It's done.
What are you talking about, Sandy?
We had our pipeline project done already.
I think you're thinking of some other pipeline. It's
No,
not.
I'm not thinking of another pipeline. It's a pipeline, and it's been done all through the Kawatha Lakes.
Yeah.
You mean, Sandy, it's ready to rock and roll, or they've canceled it?
No, it's been done. It's completed.
It's ready to rock and roll.
It's
ready
done.
to put oil and gas through it, but they've closed it down.
Are you talking about the one that you were telling me about in your neighborhood that you saw them working
Yeah.
on? Yeah, Sandy,
Yeah.
that's not the kind of pipeline that we're talking about here.
No, well, they cleaned the water. They were cleaning our water here,
I
and it looked
understand.
like a pipeline.
Yeah, it's a sewer.
That's different, Sandy.
It's
That's
an
different.
underground
Yeah.
sewer, Sandy. It's okay.
Yeah,
but
Exactly. I know.
We've got you. It's all right.
You got me.
We understand.
You know what?
you
That's
know.
what I'm afraid of.
But you know, Sandy, out in Alberta, we've just always wanted to be treated with fairness and equity and
that's
respect.
okay, John. And we're trying. Ontario's kind of on your side. I'm not sure about Quebec.
But we're gonna go back in the time machine, no. But I'll accept it. But yeah. I mean, now's the time, and now we need to eliminate all these provincial BS bullshit restrictions, and it's a wake-up call, boys and girls. Trumpster, the 2,800-pound orangutan, he's woken us up.
Yes, and we need to have Canada and Mexico squeeze Karen back into where they belong.
Yes.
Yeah.
Isabel, like an Oreo cookie, Mexico on one side, they're the chocolate, we're the chocolate on the other side, and let's squeeze that orange orangutan right to his knees.
Just
And
like a big
Isabel,
dick.
let's not forget, he's been bankrupt, 6, 7, 8 times. He's no good at marriage. Stormy Daniels, kitties, and
No, he's got a lot of practice
mistresses
at
and-
it, John. The whole wedding thing.
I mean,
the
come
divorce.
on,
Look,
he's
got
no
lots
good.
of practice.
He can't balance a checkbook. He's been bankrupt 9 times, and then his marriages, his love life has failed.
He's actually pretty good.
Stormy-
He's got every wife he's had has been super hot. Every affair he's had has been with like a Playboy bunny or a supermodel. I mean, he's got a
Jimmy
Yeah,
Fallon.
money can buy a lot, though, Rick.
You know what,
Jim-
Rick?
That's exactly
no,
right.
Hugh Hefner. He's not a Hugh Hefner.
Yeah.
No, Sandy. Jimmy Fallon had Stormy Daniels on his talk show, and he brought out a tray of mushrooms, like cookies.
Oh, no,
And there were
John.
little mushrooms and big ones.
No, not here. Not tonight.
Stormy pointed to the smallest one on the tray.
No.
Sorry.
No, you
Sorry,
can tell me
sorry.
that. You told me that
Daniels.
on the phone earlier, but we
Sorry,
can't.
it's
This is
true.
a family show.
Look it up. Google it.
It's a
Google
family
it.
show. Family show.
It's mushrooms on a tray.
No, too much swearing
Do
last
you
night.
have a big mushroom or a little mushroom? It's on a tray.
He's going to tell it anyway.
It was
Family show.
It was on. Sorry.
It's okay. I'm waiting to see if my snowman's going to smile when the snowblower comes.
Oh,
Do you still have a snowman? Everything's melting
That's a
here.
bad
It was
joke.
like spring here today. It was a beautiful
here
warm
too.
day.
It was here too, but the guy on the corner had a big backhoe and he piled all the snow in my neighbor's yard.
Oh.
And it's
Oh.
still really high. So that's what I said to her.
swam
"Well,
home
go make a
today."
snowman. Go make a snowman. And she looked at me. She said, "Why?" I said, "Go make a snowman. And when the snowblower comes by, we'll see if your snowman lapped."
Oh gosh, I heard that one.
Well, Sandy, you know what, Sandy and Rickster and Isabel, when I'm running into my oil fight, you're riding shotgun for Rimby John. I could have no better sheriffs than Arnold Schwarzenegger. You can ride shotgun for me anytime because you are true Team Canada Canadians. And you know what?
You
I
know
walked
what,
up to a guy
John?
in the bar today, and he had an Oilers jersey on. I said, "Thank you for." Who was the guy that scored the goal, Rick, out of Edmonton?
Paul
the
Henderson?
Edmonton guy scored the goal.
What are you talking
No,
about?
the winning goal. He was from Edmonton
Connor
on the
McDavid.
Canadian team. Yeah, Connor McDavid. Yeah, I went, and he was the guy sitting in Calgary with the Oilers jersey on. I went up, I gave him a big hug and a kiss, and bought him a pint of beer. Thank you for Kevin McNeeve.
Well,
yeah.
I just, as we kind of get to the end of the program here, I just wanted to just note that as Zelensky prepares to go to Washington on Friday, this is all happening while Russia today, or I guess over the last 24 hours or so, also came forward, and Vladimir Putin is saying that, you know, he's offering Trump mineral rights as well in the areas that are occupied by Russia. So it's like, I don't. This is the strangest set of negotiations surrounding any war that I've ever seen. I can't think of. Has there ever been a war in history where these kinds of
people are dying
negotiations
to
have
give
taken
away
place?
their stuff?
Yeah, it's strange. Very weird.
It's like in the schoolyard. I'll give you this if you give me that.
Yeah.
And somebody else comes by and goes, well, I got something better. Like, really?
Well, Rick, let's close it off tonight, my friend. Final thought: am I going first or last?
You're going first,
let's
and
wrap her
let's
up.
try to keep her sort of brief tonight.
You mean, am I going first or is the
You're
bell?
going first. Go ahead. Your first step. Go.
Okay. Well, you know what, Rindy John Scotty, Alberta, we're not looking at separating. We love Canada. Just treat us a little better. But don't interrupt me, Sandy, please. We have always prayed for peace. The Maverick News family worldwide, we have, and I can't harp on that enough. We've always been for peace, integrity, family values, and like my grandfather said in World War I, a glass of water has more value than a human life. We've learned nothing. That's why I pray for peace all the time. And I pray for it around the world. I don't care if you're Israel, Jordan, Palestine, Russia, Ukraine. I pray for peace. I do. I go to bed at night, Sandy, and I pray for peace. I do, because I think humanity is smarter than what's going on in the world. There's my final thought, Rickster.
All right. Sandy, you go next. No, you know what? Sandy gets to do the last word tonight. So Isabel, it's your turn.
And I'm with you, Rick. I forgot his name out west.
Rimby John's got it.
Rimby John. I pray for peace every night. Also, I'm not super religious. I am very spiritual, and I need to keep my brain focused on something. And yes, I pray for peace every night. That humans are humans, and we need to stick together. This division it's not working for the world. It's not working for the world. So that's my final thought. I wish everybody peace. And I'll try to behave the next time I come on.
Okay. And Sandy, a very brief final thought from you. We love your voice because you always bring, rays of sunshine over here. So leave us with something positive and uplifting. Make us smile tonight as we close off this Maverick News broadcast.
Peace, grace, and maybe we'll all go to Alberta one day with John and Rick and Isabel, and we visit Alberta.
Thank you, Sandy.
Sandy, we're going to have a Alberta barbecue here, my dear. It's on me.
Sandy's voice.
I would
sunshine.
love to visit there.
All right, we'll try to bring more sunshine tomorrow when we return at 7 p.m. Eastern. Love you guys. Thanks for hanging out tonight. See everybody tomorrow on...
Rick, play the song. Rick, play the Free Dog song. Rick. Free dog, free dog, free dog, free
You want
dog.
Free Dog? You got it.
Free dog.
I heard old Cosmo howling last night up on the hill where the moon shines so bright. He was singing a tune, lonesome dogs cry about freedom and running and touching the sky. If I leave here tomorrow, would you still remember me? Cosmo's free running. free dog. He's a free dog. He's a free dog. He's got the stars in his eyes, the wind in his fur, a tail that wags like it's never heard of a blur. Cosmos on a journey, he's got no chains. He's running through fields, breaking all the lanes. Now the night's getting cold and the sky's turning gray, but Cosmos still out there, he's miles away. He's not looking back, he's got his path to tread. With every step, he's leaving his path. If I leave here tomorrow, would you still remember me? Cosmos free, running wild, wild as a wind can be. He's a free dog, he's a free dog, he's a free dog. So if you're feeling lost, just think of Cosmos Run. Remember his spirit, his freedom, his fun. And maybe one day, when you're feeling low, you'll find your own freedom and let your spirit go. If I leave here tomorrow, would you still remember me? Cosmos free, running wild, wild as a wind can be. He's a free dog, he's a free dog, he's a free dog. In his eyes, the wind in his fur, a tail that wags like it's never heard of a blur. A heart full of love and a spirit so free. He's living his life wild and carefree. He's got the stars in his eyes, the wind in his fur, a tail that wags like it's never heard of blur. Cosmos on a journey, he's got no chains. He's running through fields, breaking all the lanes.
This has been a Maverick Multimedia production.